Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from extension_olive_7891. My BL kicked me out of his house, just because he does feel secure while sleeping. AITA for not seeing my nieces because I'm gay. My sister, 34, Ali, and her husband, John, 36, have two daughters, 16 and 6. My nieces, who I adore and love with all my heart. When I was 25, I moved in with my sister and BIL while I attended college. It was short-lived, about 9 months, as they decided they wanted to sell their house. But while I was living there, things were great. I was able to help watch the girls while my sister and BIL worked. We would have movie nights, games, the whole works. I was the fun uncle. With my sister, we have always had a strong sibling bond. We had parents' family and supported each other through thick and thin. In fact, up until recent years, we had one fight that we both give each other shit about because it was the only time we've ever yelled at the other. After I moved out, found my way in life and college, I came out of the closet at 27. I was actually threatened to be outed to my sister, and that's how I came out, but that's a whole separate post. She was, of course, happy for me and wanted me to be my true self. She, of course, told my BIL. John and I actually used to be really close. Before I moved in with them, we would play video games nearly every night. We became bros, and honestly, it felt like I did have a brother in my life. That changed when I came out. John had told me he was, of course, supportive and loved me all the same. But around that same time, he started to bring up religion or going to church with my sister and nieces whenever I was with them. It was really odd because after knowing John for so long, he hadn't really ever brought up religion before. The clearest example I have was once my sister asked me if I was seeing any boys, and John immediately started talking about Sunday school and how he and Ali are teaching it now. I am not a religious person, but I went to church camp as a kid. So there's a place in my heart for what it can do. That's to say, I didn't care that John brought this up. If anything, it made me feel like my sexuality made him uncomfortable. About a year and a half ago, Ali, John, and a few other friends went out to celebrate Ali's birthday. At one point, it was just me and John at our table. John said to me, "Hey, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. It's been getting really tough to explain to the girls how they can still love you although you're going to hell. It's a lot emotionally for them." And I froze. I didn't even know what to say. I'm pretty sure "Oh, okay," and someone came back to the table. It was a week later. I was watching my youngest niece, and she asked me what hell was like. It hurt so much, and who knows, maybe it wasn't John's doing that made her ask. But ever since I couldn't stop thinking about how every time I left their house, John sitting the girls down and explaining they can still love me, despite me burning in hell. So, I just emotionally withdrew. I love my nieces, but in my mind, it was easier for me to be around less so that John didn't have to explain to them how to love me. I still call and FaceTime on birthdays and holidays with other family present, but my overall presence in their life greatly diminished. Bringing us to today, I recently moved across the country to a larger city. Been super happy with life here after living in tiny Midwest towns my whole life. My sister and I still text every once in a while, and she reached out to me recently to ask about attending Christmas back home. When I said I wasn't planning on coming back for it, she blew up my phone saying I have been abandoning the girls and I'm just as shitty as the rest of our family for missing out on their lives, holidays. I replied, "Sorry, don't want John thinking I'm taking you and the girls to hell with me." She asked what that meant, and I explained what John had told me. Silence back. My mom texted me and asked what hell I did because I caused a huge fight with John and Ali. If anything, I feel I am an asshole for not being there for my nieces, but I do not feel bad for letting Ali know what John said and how it made me feel. AITA? Edit. Thank you all for the comments, seriously from the bottom of my heart. For a long time, I felt so much turmoil over this, and I worried about if what I was doing, even if best for me, was best for the girls. So, thank you again for your kind words and support. Bonus story. Amongst this same group of friends and my sister, John made the joke that I'm probably gay because I didn't have a manly presence in my life, like a father growing up. Ali didn't defend me, or even understand why I would be hurt by that joke at the time, so this also factored into emotions here. Also, I grew up on a cattle ranch farm, not really sure how to get any manlier than that. Edit 2. Sorry, the post keeps getting longer. When I made my first edit, there were quite a few comments and a little over 100 upvotes. Went to bed and work, and now, seeing all the supportive comments is overwhelming. In a good way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For all the support and advice, you guys have no idea how much it means. I want to add some clarification. A common comment. Question is, why didn't I talk to Ali about this when it happened? When I came out, I lost nearly all my friends. Didn't have much family to lose, but they didn't stick around either. And the thought of essentially having to ask Ali to choose between John and me, and in my mind, me being gay, felt similar to all the other people I'd known in my life that chose their beliefs over me being me. Not being as present, while still communicating with the girls, was what I thought was the compromise of appeasing John while still being able to have a line of communication with them. I honestly don't care what John thinks of me. I know I'm not going to hell, and if I am, it's not because I'm gay. Some other comments pointed out that Ali should have known if John was talking to the girls about this, and it has crossed my mind several times that maybe she did know about it, but maybe not the extent of what John had said to me. As of tonight, it's still been silence from Ali. Never texted my mom back. I think I will reach out soon just to check in, but the quiet is almost worse. OP is not an AH. Rather, he took a stand for his emotional and mental well-being. It's his right to prioritize himself and his mental health. His brother-in-law is an AH for making awful comments about OP. As for scores, I would rate OP's BIL 2 and OP 0 out of 5. Let's now move on to the next story form, vegetable-mobile 4875. Am I abusive or is my boyfriend? Both? Neither? Help. I am 21 and my boyfriend is 23. We've been dating for about 3 years. I'm not going to lie, our relationship has been rocky. We both come from toxic and abusive households, childhoods, but his was much worse. I know he's a great person, at least I think so, but I go back and forth constantly. At times, I feel he treats me terribly. And other times I feel like I'm the problem. Or maybe I'm too harsh on him or overthink situations. Whenever something happens and we argue, I feel like breaking up with him, but then I remember the amazing things he has done for me. He is somebody who has gone above and beyond for me. Comes to every single event to support me, has driven hundreds of hours to see me since we are long distance, spent his very last penny on me when he was struggling financially, hand makes crafts for me, buys me flowers and gifts, writes me notes almost on a daily basis, very loyal to me, goes all out for holidays and my birthdays, stops on the side of the road to pick me flowers, etc. I think you get the point that this man has been very selfless and done so many things that show how much he loves me. And everyone always says how amazing he is. He is usually a pretty easygoing guy until I bring up an issue or I have a problem with something he does. I think he is slightly insecure. He gets jealous over me and sometimes overprotective, and tends to place blame on me if I bring something up and manipulates the situation. He can be very mean when he's mad, but so can I, so how can I blame him? Other times I feel as though I just react to the disrespect he's shown me. He has done and said some pretty terrible things, but we ultimately work them out and both want to grow for each other because we see past each other's flaws, are still young, have the same goals and morals, and know that a lot of these issues are from childhood trauma and don't make us bad people. He also has done such amazing things for me that when terrible fights happen, I'm like, well, am I actually the problem? There's no way this man can do such special things for me while being abusive. With that being said, I can never tell if I'm an issue in this relationship or if I am blind to abusive behaviors. I have never acted out in previous relationships like I do in this one, so it makes me think maybe I'm actually not the problem, or maybe I love him so much and that's why these fights happen because I am emotionally attached to him. I don't know. Let's get into a few situations that I cannot tell if it's me or him in the wrong. This was a few weeks ago. We were at my university and he was staying with me for a few days. I was helping him prepare for an interview because he was very nervous about it, and we always do practice interviews with each other. I wanted him to do well, so I was just giving him my honest advice. My boyfriend tends to talk with at the end of his sentences, almost like he's always asking a question. I personally think this is cute, and I love the way he talks, but I just told him try to sound confident and straightforward during the interview. Well, I started kind of laughing over this, and I could 100% see why it may have seemed I was making fun of him, but I truly was not trying to do that. If he would have stopped me and told me I was hurting his feelings, I would have apologized and told him I didn't mean to do that. Well, instead he got up, threw the blanket on my face, I was laying on the bed, then threw a pillow at my face pretty hard. He then started putting his shoes on, saying, "You piece of shit," over and over. I was just quiet. He then left and went to do his virtual interview in another room. When he came back, he started talking about the interview like nothing happened. I was quiet, but responded to what he was saying. I then told him we should leave. I had to drive him back to his car in another city because it was getting fixed, and the plan was for him to go home afterwards. I got up to go to the bathroom, but he was kind of blocking the door, so I said, "Excuse me." He then shoulders checked me and said, "What the f*** is your problem?" After he said this, I was furious and shoved him back. Hard. I know two wrongs don't make a right, but I felt bullied in that moment. I felt like I reacted to his behavior in a very mature way at first and didn't retaliate at all, but when he did this, I lost my shit. I then went to the bathroom and came back and we left. In the car he was mad, being very mean, saying I was abusive for putting my hands on him, that I needed to talk to him, on and on, until we got to his car, and I left without saying anything. He ultimately apologized for this, and we worked it out the week after. This was physical enough for me to consider leaving him, and I almost did, but I can't help but think about all of his amazing qualities, and forgive him. But then, on to what happened tonight. We were watching a movie at his house, and I saw a TikTok about the ring girls during the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. I wasn't even going to say anything to him, but then I saw a comment saying, "About to ask my boyfriend about this," and my intrusive thoughts got the best of me. I know it's immature and dumb, I know. I asked him, "Did you see the ring girls in the fight last night?" I was honestly joking, and it was not that serious. He kept saying, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't even know girls were doing that." But he does a weird smile and face when lies, and I knew 100% he was lying. I know the whole thing is stupid, but why lie to me? I know he saw them. Just say that you did. He has a past of lying to me, and I will say that lying triggers me and makes me incredibly mad, and he knows this. We've had hundreds of conversations about it. I don't trust him completely because of lies that he has told and gaslit me about. They were never crazy terrible lies like cheating or anything, but still, lying and gaslighting is wrong no matter what. Like I said, this really wasn't a big deal. I was kind of upset that he lied to me, but then I shrugged it off. I then got on my phone and was on TikTok. He leaned over and kept saying, scroll up, and I kept saying no. It was the Ring Girls video LMAO, but he kept trying to take my phone and kind of had his hands in my face. This all happened so fast, but he kept trying to grab my phone, and I used my shoulder to kind of shove him away. Nothing hard or purposely to hurt him at all. Maybe it did? I don't know, it all happened so fast, and if I did, I didn't mean to. He then grabbed my wrist extremely hard and threw my hand over. It hurt very bad and left red marks on my wrist. Afterwards, it hurt to move it. I got up to leave and then went home. He kept blowing up my phone, saying that I need to stop acting like the victim, that I punched him in the face first, saying how everything I did was wrong basically, and that he has red marks on his neck, and sent me a picture. First of all, I never punched this man. The red marks on his neck seriously just looked like his normal skin. I shoved him away from me. Maybe I did f*** up and hurt him, but I really don't think I did. I sent him photos of my wrist that clearly show red marks and a bruise, and he kept blaming me and saying that I need to stop playing victim. I genuinely don't know what to do. Maybe I am in the wrong, I don't know. Maybe he's abusive and I'm blind to it. Maybe I did put my hands on him first. Another situation happened last year that, looking back, I should have left over, but I still can't decide if I'm the problem or if he is. Like I said, this was over a year ago, and we ended up working it out, I guess. Even though he never took accountability for this night and still says to this day that it was my fault. Me, my friends, and my boyfriend were all at a bar and were walking out to leave. One of my guy friends from school stopped me to say hi and gave me a side hug. A literal side hug guy. My boyfriend sees it, comes up to me and pulls my arm for me to leave, and then we do. He's being extremely shitty towards me, walking way ahead of me, not speaking to me at all. My friends wanted to go get food, and my boyfriend still wasn't speaking to me. So I decided to go with my friends, and he stayed at my dorm. He blocked me on social media and turned off his location, texted me that he's going home and that we're done, etc. I finally get back to my dorm, and he's on the couch pretending to sleep. I try calling his name to get his attention, and he won't answer me. Finally, I try shaking him awake, and he still won't budge. I was getting mad at this point over the way he was disrespecting me and treating me. This was a year ago, so I'm trying to remember full details. I believe he woke up and kept calling me a cheater over and over. I was so upset, and I think I took his phone laying by him and kind of dropped it on him. This sounds kind of insane, and I can't remember fully what I did, but I know it was wrong. He finally got up and was so mad and pushed me back hard. After this, I slapped him in his face. I know it wasn't right, and violence is never the answer, but him pushing me infuriated me. His nose started bleeding, which I didn't know until later, because he then grabbed my whole body, lifted me up sideways, and threw me down on my couch as hard as he could. The couch is not cushioned at the top, and it hurt bad. He literally threw me as hard as he could. I went into my room and was crying and shaking and stood in one spot for literally an hour. I literally just stood staring at the wall because I was so shocked and shaking so bad. He kept trying to get into my locked room, was trying to pick it, banging on it, calling me a cheater multiple times. He was on the phone with his sibling saying I punched him, that I was keeping all his stuff from him and locking him out, when I had already left his keys and everything. He could need outside my door and told him to leave probably 50 times, but he wouldn't listen and kept trying to get in. He finally got into my room because the lock isn't great, called me a again, and tried taking my phone to get me to stop recording multiple times. Long story short, this was a huge fight that involved violence, name-calling, and kept us both up until probably 5 a.m. I cried the whole night, and his sibling was blowing up my phone, saying how terrible I was for locking him out and stealing his stuff. I was just so exhausted and hurt. I couldn't tell if I was the one in the wrong, because I did slap him and kind of throw his phone. He made me feel at fault for everything this night, and we got over it, I guess. He never owned up to anything. I didn't really want to include this story because it was so terrible, and I feel doesn't show us for who we are. Nothing this bad has happened since then, and we were both drunk, so I wrote it off as a one-time terrible fight that would never happen again. I know everyone reading thinks this is awful, but can you imagine somebody doing so many amazing things for you and then things like this happening? It's hard to know what to do. Physical things have never actually been my reason for wanting to leave him, because they've never really been a concern for me. He is usually the most amazing man I've ever met, but sometimes he flips a switch. These were the 3 instances that got physical, but all the other fights were about him not respecting me, lying to me, not caring about how I feel, or manipulating situations. Which honestly hurt me worse than any of these other fights did. I just don't know what to do because I feel as though maybe I'm the problem. I wonder if I fix myself and start being sweeter, nicer, IDK. Maybe this relationship will get better. I know we're young and I know these fights do not define who we are as people, but they are pretty bad. 90% of the time he is a genuine, loving, and nurturing person who makes me feel special and loved. I don't know. I feel like nobody understands me and they will just read this and think this relationship is awful. Maybe I'm dumb and can't see things for how they are. I'm so hurt right now. Thank you for reading. Honestly speaking, neither OP nor OP's boyfriend is an AH. Rather, it is their toxic background that is the main hurdle in their relationship. I think if they communicate in a constructive way, things could get better. Otherwise, separating is the best option. Let's now jump onto the next story from throwaway question 448. AITA. For wanting to break up with my boyfriend because of his twin sister. I 17F and my boyfriend 17M and his twin sister. So, almost a year ago, I started dating my current boyfriend. He isn't from my school, and his house is about 20 minutes car drive away from where I live. We meet at a tennis club that we both go to, and I liked him almost instantly when he joined for about 2 months before I finally gathered the guts to introduce and chat him up, which resulted in us dating. Everything about this would be a great story if it wasn't for one thing, and that is his twin sister, who hates me for literally no reason. But when I say hates me, I don't mean the usual 16 then and 17 now years old girl who tisks or rolls her eyes or talks shit about you behind your back. I'm talking burning, pure hatred, and it's starting to get to me. So here's the thing. I'm worried about this because I love my boyfriend so much, and I'm worried that this might grow into a very long-term thing, possibly marriage, which would tie me to her fully. I come from a bit of an abusive household. My father and my mother hated each other, but they were one of those Christian couples that were taught death before divorce. It took until I was 12 when my mom finally said to herself that maybe she will rather be happy than married. But until then, it was arguing, screaming, fights, and sometimes domestic abuse on an almost daily basis. Hatred inside family is horrible, and I never want to experience this again. And here it is, all over again. So finally, let's get into some specifics because I'm stretching this out. So about 3 months into our dating, it turned from the casual long calls and some meetups like once or twice a week, due to distance, to a lot more common meet. Until then, I actually never went to his house or met his twin sister, who looks so much like him, it creeps me out. But I was excited. I thought, yay, we can be friends. The second I met her, she looked at me with a gaze of such hatred and disgust, I could feel it like a punch into my stomach. We shook hands, and she had the most fake, poisonous snake smile. I tried to be nice to her, and she would barely even respond to me, but wouldn't stop staring at me with that hatred for a second. From that moment on, it was just that. Whenever I was forced to meet her, that death stare was there, but she would just plainly ignore me trying to talk to her. Like 2 weeks after that, my parents were gone from the house, so I invited my BF for a night stay. We did it before, but it would be the first time he stayed the night at my place, and I wanted to make it real romantic and stuff. Before he even arrived, I got a phone call from his sister asking me if I told him to come over there. I said yes, and she told me he canceled their movie night to go there. She called me a disgusting whore and that she wishes someone broke into the house and raped me to death. Just horrible, vile stuff. She was basically screaming at the top of her lungs. Not half an hour after my boyfriend got there, his sister calls him, all panicked, saying a creepy man is outside their house and is trying to get in, and mom and dad are asleep, and she is scared. So obviously, him being a nice guy, he jumps on his bike and drives back home. After a bit, he calls me and apologizes, says he didn't see anyone, but says his sister is crying and begs him to stay because she doesn't feel safe. I knew instantly this is bullshit. From that point, this would become a regular thing. She would try to disturb, intrude, or stop any date or instance that we set up with whatever means she can without it being obvious to him. And God, the phone calls. The daily one. 3 phone calls of her screaming the most insane insults I have ever heard and wishing me a brutal and painful death for stealing her brother away from her. I thought maybe over time this stops, but as I said, we have been dating for more than a year now. It's been a year of this, just nonstop this, and I can't handle it anymore. The endless avalanche of hatred. And whenever I'm forced to meet her, she puts on that exact same, "I wish you were dead" smile, and stares at me with that death stare without barely winking, and I just know she would dance in joy if a truck suddenly hit me and killed me, and probably go piss on my grave. I love my boyfriend, he is sweet and kind, and I seriously think that this could turn into a very serious and loving relationship, possibly even a marriage one. And it terrifies me. It terrifies me that if this keeps going, it will just be years and years of this hatred. Or more, the thing is, I'm also just terrified in general. The things she says, the insane, unhinged things she says, they are truthy terrifying. And sometimes I really feel like she is one snap or weak moment away from just doing some of them and genuinely hurting me. I know their dad has a hunting rifle and taught them both how to shoot at least basics, and she many times told me that she has a bullet with my name on it ready to go in her screaming rants. So I came to a point where I just can't handle it anymore, and I'm genuinely thinking about just breaking up with my boyfriend. I don't even know what I would tell him as the reason, because there genuinely isn't one. He is such a good guy and does nothing wrong. And I feel like such a bitch for even thinking about it, because he doesn't deserve that. But I don't deserve this maniac abuse either. Do you guys think I'm a bitch for wanting to break up with him just to be free of her? What would you do in this situation? Edit 1. Thank you all for your comments. I'm going to resume trying to sleep. I know the solution to this problem seems like a simple and obvious one, but I have reasons why it's difficult for me. More than one. All in all, I will try to gather the courage to stand up for myself after doing what the person from UK told me, and recording some of the unhinged lunatic calls she blessed me with almost daily. I just hope I can do it in a way that does as little damage as possible to everyone and everything. I have always been bad at confronting stuff, much more of a quiet girl who backs out of situations rather than face the beasts, so I basically have to do something that goes straight against my nature. Still, thanks everyone for the sympathy and suggestions. OP is not an AH for prioritizing her well-being. Her decision to break up with her boyfriend is completely justified. Thought her boyfriend is not at fault. His sister's actions left OP with no other choice. As for scores, I would rate OP's boyfriend sister 2 out of 5, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from Plain-Aardvark 794. My boyfriend talks during movies and is very clingy. My boyfriend, 32M, and I, 29F, started to date about 2 years ago, and things are pretty serious between us. As in, we are making future long-term plans together. We spend lots of time together. Right now, we live separately. He has a hybrid job where he basically only spends about 5-6 hours in his home office and works from home for the rest of the 30+ hours. I'm a full-time student, and I work a part-time job. My degree is very demanding, and his job is easy in the sense that he can practically go anywhere at any time when he has a slot available or when he's not needed for a project. This sounds an amazing dynamic, except he's become very clingy, and he's been clingy from the get-go, but it's getting worse. Aside from the clinginess, I've never had this kind of attention before in a relationship, and before I love it so much. He's so considerate and thought and treats me like an absolute princess, like a legit princess. I pay for nothing, and I have never touched a door handle when I'm with him. I reciprocate the consideration by doing the same for him, but in a different way, which is tending to his emotional needs, while not acting like a therapist. By letting him vent about all the things from his past, he kept bottled inside, as well as cooking and organizing his space. He wants to be heard, and I want to hear him and be there for him. We are practically the same person. We just like doing things for each other. It's clear to each other and everyone around us that we have very strong feelings for each other. We have an awesome dynamic, and we communicate about all issues except for these two things. He can't be quiet during movies, and he almost expects, and strongly desires, to spend every other day and entire weekends together. I have a massive issue with this because I love watching movies. I have watched hundreds, and I love looking for details, and it's a time of peace and quiet, because I live in a noisy world, so therefore it's my escape. And he knows how important this is to me, as I have expressed it several times. He also loves movies like I do. It's common for us to pause the movie like 2-5 times and would talk for like 5-10 minutes, and or he would get up and go do something. Not like get a snack or drink, which is very understandable, but would go do a small activity like finding something or shuffle something around. At the beginning, it was tolerable, because we were so excited to be around each other, but now it's not. I even tried to come up with a solution of typing out comments and questions during the movie and waiting until the end to talk, and that's not working out. I have been so patient during all of this, and so patient where I just hold my tongue or sugarcoat it, aside from like 2 times where I was blunt. I'm still excited to be around him, just not the part where he talks during movies. The second part of this is that we spend so much time together that it's affecting me mentally in terms of being able to remain focused on school and on myself. I have had massive issues over the years with building focus and discipline, and now I'm finally in a good place. He wants to spend all day and all night together, 24/7 if he could. Like I feel almost bad saying that I need a day off. I feeling saying that is like saying a day off from working. I love being by myself at times because I'm learning myself, and I'm trying to better myself as a human by building healthier habits and improving my mindset. I'm beginning to feel like this relationship is holding me back in a way, and I really hate that idea because I like him so much and I can't see life without him. I'm also terrified of hurting his feelings and consequently pushing him away because these two things are very touchy subjects. I've brought them up multiple times, but I don't think I'm communicating it correctly, and I don't think he's taking me very serious in the sense that my time is valuable, and I need to build structure for myself with the time I have after school and after work. I firmly believe that he respects me and my thoughts, but I just think there might be a bit of selfishness, I'm not sure what other word I should use, coming from him. I just need space because I feel like my life is just now starting, and I want to become the best version of myself but I feel like it's being hindered. I feel awful and spineless for wanting to tell him, hey, I don't really want to watch movies with you anymore because you won't stop talking. And we have to find a solution for the amount of time we spend together because I feel like I'm not progressing in the areas I want to. I think I'm spineless because I'm afraid to tell him these things and that I'll suppress his personality and he won't be the same. I'll never find someone like him because he's awesome and I'm scared of being alone without him. He's my best friend and I genuinely mean that. My life would not be the same. AITA for wanting to say those things to him? AITA for wanting to not talk during movies? AITA for wanting to only see each for a few hours every other week and wanting to put space between us? I'm just scared of hurting him, but I don't want to walk on eggshells. I'm so stressed out about this and I feel stuck. Please, please help me. OP is not an AH for wanting to set boundaries and prioritize her career and growth over her boyfriend's clingy demands. OP should clearly communicate what she wants because communication is a key in a relationship. OP's boyfriend is a little bit an AH for his behavior, so I would rate him 0.5 out of 5, and OP gets a 0. AITA for telling my mom to shut the f up since she's a liar and her opinion doesn't matter. My dad died when I, 18M, was 6. My parents had separated at the time, and mom was already dating her husband at that point. They decided to get married and give me a family unit after dad losing dad. Then within a few months, they were sitting me down to say they wanted to change my last name to their last name. Mom said it was important so that her husband could do his part to take care of me without issues concerning last names. I told her I wanted to keep my last name, and her husband wasn't my dad, and I didn't want to lose more of dad. I even cried about how important it was to me. She and her husband promised me repeatedly that they would pay for me to change my name back as soon as I was 17, and it was only to make life easier while I was younger. And people would make life more difficult for her husband to do certain things with me. I always regretted it, but believed for a long time they'd follow through. But about a year ago, when I mentioned it to my mom, she told me there was no rush, and I told her I wanted the name changed before graduation so I could have it on my diploma. There was a lot of back and forth, and her husband decided to add his own "what's the big deal anyway" comments occasionally. He'd also say his name had been my name longer than Dad's name had been at that point, and I said I didn't care, and I wanted my actual name back. That was my actual dad's name too. Eventually, my mom admitted she wasn't going to pay for me to change it back, and she believed I should keep her husband's name because he'd raised me for so long and had done so much. I said no. She told me it wasn't my choice, and I told her she would not stop me once I turned 18. I also told her that she was never going to have a good relationship with me again after lying to me and letting me down. She called me overdramatic, but I spent the rest of my time living with them cold and somewhat hostile, and I shut them out as much as I could. Mom kept, and still keeps, trying. I moved out of their house and in with my cousin, and I filed the day after my 18th birthday to change my name back. My court date is coming up very soon, and my mom knows about it because of extended family. She has tried to forbid me from changing my last name back, and she even lied and said her husband adopted me too, so I couldn't. But I confirmed that didn't happen. Eventually, she told me I was disrespecting them as my parents. I told her then to shut the f up because she's a liar, and I don't care what she has to say about this because her opinion does not matter here. My mom started crying, and I told her good. I told her that she lost me over this and it was her own damn fault. I told her I would never have said yes to the change had I known. And I told her to suck it up because she was not in charge of me anymore. Some extended family are backing my mom because of how I spoke to her. And mom told me I had no reason to speak to her like I did. AITA? OP is not an AH for standing up for something that is deeply meaningful to him. Instead, OP's mom and stepdad are AHs for breaking their promise. Another point is that I don't understand why they asked him to take his stepdad's last name. Regardless, OP and her husband are AHs, and I would rate them each 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. I will rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Worldly-P-5367. AITA for not responding when someone doesn't use my actual name. My 16M name is Nico, and it's not short for anything. On my birth certificate, it says Nico middle name last name. This is something a few people can't understand, and some people call me Nicholas. Even teachers who see me on the class list as Nico and not Nicholas. I'm a foster kid. I've been in the system since I was 2. My mom is the only bio family I know, but she's not able to take care of me. I see her twice a year through court-ordered visits, but nobody in her family and I don't have anything to do with my paternal side. I've been with my current foster family for 3 years, and I'm really happy with my foster parents and foster siblings. My foster parents actually want to help the kids they foster, and their kids are cool with their parents fostering and don't bully me or others for stealing their families. So I hope I get to stay until I age out of the system. My only problem is some of their extended family are snobs and they don't like calling me Nico. So they call me Nicholas even after being corrected a million times. My foster parents have explained that my name is actually Nico, not Nicholas. But the reply is always, but Nico is short for Nicholas. A couple of the extended family have encouraged me to change my name because Nicholas sounds much more professional for an adult male, which I will be soon. I was like, no thanks. My foster parents told me I should ignore whenever someone calls me Nicholas now, unless they're new and just assume. But I can ignore their family members who do it. So that's what I did. I've ignored them a handful of times now, and it bothers them so much. Yesterday it happened twice, because one kept trying to call Nicholas over and I just didn't go. The other asked Nicholas to pass the potatoes at dinner, and I kept eating and didn't pass anything. I was then called out for ignoring them, and my foster parents said nobody knew who they were talking to because there was no Nicholas at the table. One of my foster sisters said she assumed it was her Nicole, and they got confused, and that's why she passed it instead. I was told I should be more open to the wisdom others offer with name suggestions, and stop being rude by ignoring people, even though my foster parents backed me up again. It made me feel away because this really is my best foster experience, and I don't want to piss off people in my foster family. So AITA? OP is not an AH for demanding to be called by his real name. It is disrespectful on the part of his relatives to insist on calling OP Nicholas, especially when he doesn't like to be called by this name. OP's demands are 100% justified. OP's relatives who don't call him by his real name are AHs, and I would rate them 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is in the right, so I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from smooth_instruction11. AITA for asking my sister to replace my jelly beans after her son ate them. So, I, 25M, recently invited my family over for dinner at my new condo. I'm really proud of this place. It took years of saving, hard work, and sacrifice to get here. It's small, but it's mine, and I wanted to celebrate with a nice family dinner. I decided to make homemade spaghetti carbonara. I spent hours on it, crisped pancetta, freshly grated parmesan, whisked with eggs and pasta water for a perfect silky sauce. Carbonara is all about timing and texture, so I was in the kitchen paying close attention to every step. I added garlic bread, salad, and even made a cheesecake for dessert. It was a big effort, and I wanted the evening to feel special. Now, I keep a big jar of jelly beans on my coffee table as a treat. I love picking out a few here and there, and I always save the cream soda ones for last. They're my favorite. The jar has lasted a long time, and it's something I enjoy after a long day. My sister Laura, 35F, brought her 7-year-old son, who's honestly a bit of a handful. He's not used to hearing no and thinks every space is his to do what he wants. My sister has never set limits with him, and growing up, our parents spoiled her too. While I was busy in the kitchen, my nephew found the jelly bean jar. I didn't notice at first because I was trying to get the carbonara just right. After dinner, I went to grab a handful of jelly beans and realized that almost all the cream soda ones were gone. My nephew had picked them out, leaving a mess of crumbs and broken bits. I pulled Laura aside and mentioned it, asking if she had noticed. She just shrugged and said, "Oh, he only likes the cream soda ones, so he picked those out, no big deal." I tried to be polite, but I told her that those were my favorites and asked if she could replace them, or at least get me some more of the cream soda flavor. She got annoyed and snapped, "He's just a kid. You're seriously this worked up over some jelly beans?" I told her it wasn't about the jelly beans, but that it would have been nice if she'd kept an eye on him or taught him to ask. Laura rolled her eyes and said, "Then don't leave temptations out if you don't want kids touching them." I asked her one more time to either replace the jar or just the cream soda ones, but she refused, calling me petty and saying I was blowing things out of proportion. My parents jumped in to back her up, telling me to drop it and that I should know better than to have temptations out around kids. But it's not just about the money. It's about respect and boundaries. I put a lot into that dinner, and her response was to let her son treat my place like his personal candy store. Now my family thinks I'm overreacting, but to me, this is about respecting boundaries. AITA for asking my sister to replace the cream soda jelly beans her son ate? Edit. I'll accept my verdict, since apparently it is normal these days to allow a child to root through a jar of jelly beans like a hog looking for truffles. What I won't accept, what I won't tolerate, is the insults about my competency as a home chef. Let me walk you through it so you understand why real carbonara takes time and why cutting corners would be a disgrace. First, I went to this authentic Italian market with shelves stacked high with imported goods, where the scent of cured meats fills the air. They carry real pancetta, flown in weekly, and I spent ages with the owner, Domenico, who handpicked the perfect wedge of Parmigiano Reggiano for me. A rich, nutty block that was almost too beautiful to grate. Next, I stopped at this tiny family-owned shop that specializes in fresh farm eggs and produce. Carla, the owner, gets these eggs from a nearby farm, and each one is an intense, deep golden color, perfect for a creamy, rich sauce. Finally, I swung by a salumeria for semolina flour. It sounds dramatic, but that's the lengths I go for traditional pasta. The place feels like a rustic, old-world bakery, with walls lined in wooden shelves and burlap sacks stacked high. Their semolina flour has a texture and richness that just doesn't compare. Ideal for handmade pasta that holds up with the perfect al dente bite. Back home, I crafted the pasta from scratch. Flour piled on the counter, eggs nestled into a well, kneading it with care until the dough was soft and elastic. A process that took a solid 15 minutes of arm work. Then, I let the dough rest before rolling it into long ribbons, each one dusted lightly with flour, like fresh snow. Finally, I crisped the pancetta, grated the cheese by hand, and whisked the eggs to the perfect consistency. The sauce had to be watched like a hawk, just enough heat to turn it creamy without scrambling, with careful additions of pasta water to reach that glossy, silken texture. So yes, it took hours, and I'm not ashamed to say that. OP is not an AH for asking her sister to replace the jelly beans that her son ate without OP's permission. OP is not an AH for her demand. Instead, OP's sister is an AH for enabling her son's messy behavior. It is not just about jelly beans, it is about OP's sister's irresponsible behavior. So, OP's sister is in the wrong, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the next story for mom's crazy partner. AITA for walking to my dad's house instead of spending the day with my mom's female partner. When I, 15M, was 13, my mother, a woman, cheated on my dad with one of her female friends from college she reconnected with. My parents divorced, and my mom married her partner. I'm an only child, and I live with my mom during the week. We're quite close. Her partner makes a lot of money. So much money that my mom thinks it doesn't make sense for her to work, and she's a stay-at-home mom. My relationship with my mom's partner is tense. At first, I didn't mind her. Since my mom doesn't work, her partner provides for her. As long as she provided for my mom and made her happy, I didn't care. My mom provides for me with child support money from my dad. Issues started quickly arising when my mom's partner started intruding on my life. She tried to look through my laptop but couldn't crack my password and demanded I open it for her. I refused. There was a massive argument, and my mom took my side, which caused tension between my mom and her partner. Next, she started judging me for my eating habits and weight. She started making comments about how I'm looking chubbier than usual and should stop eating so much fast food. I literally eat what my mom cooks at home. She also demands, since it's her house, I always keep my room clean and organized. I have no issue with this. She is right. What bugs me is that she will come into my room at like 6 a.m. and will yell at me while I'm asleep to start cleaning. All this BS results in a lot of daily arguments between us. I've started going to my dad's after school instead. This causes my mom to freak out and beg me to go home to her. I hate doing that, but I love my mom and do it for her. A few days ago, my mom sat me down with her partner and asked both of us if we could figure out a way to get along. A couple hours of discussion, and there was an agreement to try to be more respectful. Despite this, a lot of the same behavior keeps going on. And today, on the birthday of my mom's partner, my mom asked if I was going to celebrate with them. I thought about it and said no. My mom told me I don't have a choice. Since her partner provides for her, we both owe her basic decency and respect. She told me to get ready and dress nicely, since we were going out to eat. I had this moment, so when my mom went to shower, I decided to leave the house and walk to my dad's place. My mom freaks the fuck out and calls me. I don't pick up, so she calls my dad and he tells her where I am. There is a huge argument between the two, and at the end of it, my dad congratulated me on standing up to my mom and her partner, despite being such a jerk to them. AITA? OP is certainly not an AH for standing up to protect his boundaries. He has every right to be respected, and his decision to walk to his dad's is completely justified. As for scores, I would rate OP's mom and her partner 4 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now move on to the next story from Top Sure Bet, 9466. Would I be an AH if I ban my son's girlfriend from my house? My 52F son, 22M, has started bringing his girlfriend over a little over a month ago. The first time he brought her over, I took it quite formally and cooked up a feast. But it soon became obvious, it's becoming a daily thing, and not just a one-time formal thing. The first meeting she came quite a bit late and the food was cold by the time she came. No pardons or anything, and when we were done, everyone helped to pack up. And we thought she would kind of get the notion, but since it was her first time here, we didn't say anything. As for desserts, I like to do this thing example for cupcake. I will prepare the icing and everyone would gather and decorate their dessert, but she made it quite clear from the get-go she wasn't interested in it and stuff. So for basically the last month she's almost here daily, and she would request for specific dishes with no thanks and stuff. My other son, 17M, has also verbally called him out on her, not contributing anything gently, but she said something around the lines of no ring, no wife duties. I don't see this as a wife duty. I would do this for my friends' hangout, and everyone in my house put a hand in, my daughters, my husband, and my sons. So today when my son told me that she requested a specific meat pie for dinner, I am quite done. However, I don't want to affect my relationship with my son over this. Especially since he really likes her a lot, but I'm really considering banning her from our dinners. Edit. The reason I have such a big problem with this is because my other children has brought their mates back. My eldest son and his girlfriend is living in my house actually, but none of them have a problem like this. It was almost natural of them to contribute. Also, I don't have a problem with not wanting to decorate, but it's the idea of her not joining in on family. Like movie night and everything, she would just stay in the room alone. Even my son was in the living room. Edit 2. Yes, it was verbally communicated to her that she's expected to help out after maybe a few weeks, but she replied with the no ring, no wife duties ideology. And no, my son isn't able to get his own place. It's expensive and you need to be married to get a house. He can't just move out. OP is not an AH for banning her son's rude girlfriend from her home. OP has been hosting her son's girlfriend regularly, but her dismissive behavior is not justifiable. OP made a good decision to ban her. The girlfriend, not OP, is the AH in this situation, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is not in the wrong, so I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Agile Abbreviations 11. AITA, for telling my mum I won't be giving my son her last name. Hi Reddit. I'm a 21F who's expecting my first child with my partner of almost 8 years, 20M. Our son is due in less than 2 months. For this story to make sense, it requires some backstory. My father isn't in the picture, so my immediate family is me, my mother, and my twin. About 3 years ago, my maternal grandmother died. I didn't have a relationship with her, and neither did my mum, due to them always fighting. My grandma was quite wealthy, and when she passed away, she left me and my twin $500,000 total in a trust that we couldn't access until we were 25. She left my mother nothing. My mother got a lawyer and got money released early from that trust with the condition that me and my twin gave her half of our inheritance each. If we hadn't agreed to give her anything, she would have gotten nothing. Our mum then convinced us to put all the money into a trust of her own for our family exclusively for education and housing, saying it would build stability for future generations. I used this money to get a house that me and my partner currently live in. Since my mum found out I was pregnant, she's been very pushy that we use her last name, which is currently my last name. It's a traditional Scottish name with a capital letter in the middle and a lot of use of the letters M and N. I don't like this last name. It's hard to pronounce from just reading. I also fully intend to take my partner's last name in the future. 3 months ago, I told her we wouldn't be using her last name and would be using just my partner's last name. This set her off, calling me petty and ungrateful. I apologized for upsetting her and asked if we could have a conversation about it so I could understand why it upset her. I expressed that I love her and I don't want her to be upset. She refused, saying it was my child and I could do what I wanted. I assumed she had come to terms with it and moved on. Fast forward to last week. I got a text from my mum saying the following. By the way, I've made changes to the trust. Her last name needs to be your child's surname if you want him to benefit from the trust. I haven't worked this hard for the future to support a partner's last name. That's just the way it is. My last name or bust. I'd rather take the lot and spend it. This upset me. I asked her to give me some time and space to think about what she's done. She then went off at me about how her hard work wouldn't be wasted, even though she herself said it would be set up for future generations like my kids. She wouldn't even have any money to blackmail me with if I hadn't agreed to give her half of my inheritance after her own mother screwed her over. I have gone no contact, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm the asshole for not just using her name to keep her happy in order to make sure my son gets access to that money. I don't want him to miss out just because his grandmother is an entitled piece of work. So, Reddit, AITA? OP is not an AH for standing up for her son. Her mom's demand is manipulative, disrespectful, and self-serving. OP has every right to choose the last name of her choice for her son. OP's mom is being unreasonable, and she is an AH here. I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from OK_author4471. AITA. For what I said to my fiance's dad's wife. My fiance, 27M, and I, 26F, are engaged, and right now we're still planning our wedding. I'm walking down the aisle with my two brothers, since our parents are both sadly passed, and my fiance wants to have his older sisters walk him, since he doesn't see why we both can't walk, and he wanted to include them as much as possible. He also wants to dance with them during our reception. His dad's wife discovered this and wanted to be the one walking him down the aisle and dancing with him. But my fiance, and both of his sisters actually, have not got the best relationship with this woman. While their relationship with their dad is pretty okay. Not very close, but not super distant either. But his wife is another story. My fiance first met her when he was 10, and his sisters were 13 and 15. Their mom died a year earlier, which their dad's decision to remarry that fast did add some strain to their relationship, because they don't feel like he considered them at all. When my fiance met her, he thought she was okay, but by the time the wedding was approaching, he realized she wanted to be more of a mother to him. She wanted the girls as her bridesmaids and my fiance, her son, to walk her down the aisle. None of them wanted to do this. After the wedding, when she wanted my fiance to allow her to step into the role of mother for him, it grew more tense and unfriendly. My fiance felt like she forced the issue too much. She felt like he should have been more accepting of a second mother in his life. The tension grew when she realized she was truly not even seen as second best by him, but was not seen as anything beyond his dad's wife. His dad's wife already requested he let her walk him and dance. He clearly said no. There was a fight over her feeling like his mother and him, laying down the fact he has never considered her to be anything of a mother to him. When she couldn't get through to him, she tried to go through me, using the fact I was adopted and my parents adopted me to do this. She told me I know all about blood not meaning parent, which is true, I do. My fiance doesn't feel this way because his mom was biologically related to him, but because she was there to him and she was the one who raised him, which is how I feel about my parents, and it's a whole thing. I told her it was my fiance's decision, and I would not force him to do anything he doesn't want to. She told me for the future of my future family, I must and I should as a woman who has no genetic family. This got under my skin, and I told her that she is not winning any points with me by talking to me like that, and that I would never betray my fiancé for her. I also told her she needed to back off and accept that she does not have a place in their hearts, and forcing herself onto them will not help. She was furious with me and called me a bad daughter-in-law. Then she texted me about it afterward and told me I owe her an apology. AITA? OP is not an age for standing up for her fiancé. Her decision to not compel her fiancé to do what he doesn't like is reasonable. Her fiancé's entitled stepmom is being an AH here, and I would give her a 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from adventurous_bag_3723. AITA for asking my boyfriend to quit his sport? I, 23F, have been with my boyfriend, 28M, for about 2 years. He has played rugby for the entirety of our relationship and started about a year before we met. Rugby is the third person in our relationship, so I asked him to stop playing. Was I wrong? Every Saturday is rugby day, where he wakes up, watches a game, plays a game with his team, and then watches another game after, usually followed up by highlight reels on YouTube until he goes to bed. He has a 2-hour practice every Tuesday and Thursday. He coaches a high school team. He assistant coaches a college team. After every game, practice, scrimmage, etc. He comes home with some sort of injury, or is just in general debilitated by pain, covered in bruises and cuts. He has been to the hospital for a separated shoulder, a split open eyebrow, a split open lip that went all of the way through his muscle and fat, and the most recent was he got a bunch of turf beads in his eyelid and was almost blinded, not exaggerating, by it. He will take off work for games and practices. He will cancel dates for games and practices. He will miss important events for games and practices. My family home caught on fire. We had a fundraiser. He tried to skip it for a game. The game got cancelled, so that's why he showed up. We were out to my birthday dinner, and he asked if we could rush it so that he could make his practice after. We can't go out and do anything on a rugby day. We can't have sex on a rugby day. He can't function on a rugby day. And his excuse is, it's tough on rugby days. Well, his Saturday is a rugby day has turned into every day is a rugby day. He gets stressed out financially because where we live is extremely expensive. But he has money for new cleats, new studs for his cleats when they break off, tape for his joints for games, team memorabilia. Basically, he has money for rugby, like an addict has money for his fix. I want to say I'm glad he has something he enjoys. I'm glad he coaches, and that his students look up to him, and that it makes him feel good about himself. We've both met some incredible people through the rugby community, but the phone calls at 1 a.m. that he's in the hospital due to an injury, getting yelled at because he's broke, having to cater to him whenever he plays because he's sore, consoling him when he's bawling his eyes out because he lost a starting position and having to eat, sleep, and breathe rugby because he does, it was too much. He freaked when I asked him to leave, told me I don't appreciate the things he cares about, said I should be thankful he has rugby, or else he would be dead, that he has nothing else. I feel horrible. AITA? Update. Are people not seeing where I asked him to stop playing? He can coach, mentor, watch, etc. That is okay. It's the overwhelming amount of injuries, money spent, and then screaming at me that I'm the reason he's broke that made me ask him to stop playing. OP is not an AH here, and her asking her boyfriend to stop playing rugby is a reasonable request given the injuries, financial strain, and above all, neglect of their relationship. Love for a sport is justifiable, but going mad for it is not, and sacrificing your relationship for it is beyond comprehension. So, I think OP's boyfriend is being an AH here, and I would rate him 1 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP is not in the wrong, so I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Sad-Cell 2569. AITA for offending my in-laws by deciding my daughters won't have a Quinceanera, and the reasons. Context: my husband, M35, and I, F34, have 2 daughters. The oldest, Lexi, 14, is not my husband's biological child, but he has been nothing short of a father to her. Our second daughter, Rosie, husband's bio, is just a baby. Last weekend, we got together with hubby's family at his parents' house. MIL started talking about how we need to prepare for Lexi's Quinceanera next year. Hub's family has joked multiple times about Lexi getting to have a quince now that she's an honorary Mexican through my husband. My husband's family is from Mexico. I am not of Latino origin. They grew up in the Catholic faith. I did not. While I love that hubby's family considers Lexi their own and includes her in other Mexican traditions, Quinceaneras are the one exception. I have told my husband before I don't agree with what it historically represents, and we aren't Catholic. My husband has also said he understands this. I tell my MIL that Lexi won't be having a quince and has told me she just wants to go do something with her friends. My MIL snapped at my husband in Spanish and left the room. I was then bombarded with both of my SILs, one their husbands, and my MIL from the other room, demanding to know why Lexi couldn't have a quince. My husband told them to stand down, but for the next 20 minutes they kept making passive-aggressive comments like, "Poor Lexi won't have a quince like her little sister will." I finally said in a stern but calm tone, "I understand it's a tradition, but I do not agree with the original meaning of quinces, in that now a 15-year-old is a woman and ready for marriage. I know it's modernized now and means they're just entering womanhood, but I still don't agree with the symbolism. They're kids. Besides, husband and I don't practice Catholic faith. Lexi is not having a quince, and I don't want Rosie to have one either. From all directions, shouts of, "What? Rosie has to have one! And Rosie is Mexican. You can decide for Lexi, but not for Rosie," came from all my in-laws. All last week, my husband was getting texts about how much I offended them, and that a quince, more so for Rosie as his bio kid, is a rite of passage and marks a milestone into womanhood. I told my husband that if Rosie really wants one in the future, I would be open to hearing her reasonings, but I won't encourage or force her to. My husband hates confrontation and told me this morning that I'm the jerk for not just giving in, because disagreeing with how they feel about quinces is offensive to them. OP is not the AH. While the Quinceanera is an important tradition for her husband's family, OP has valid concerns about its historical meaning and their lack of Catholic faith. She's respectful in expressing her stance and is open to hearing her daughter's future wishes. Her husband, however, should support her decision rather than caving to family pressure. No scores this time. Let's now jump to the next story from flaky-number-3617. AITA for not inviting my best friend's boyfriend to a 6-year clear of cancer meal. I, 19M, suffered from cancer while I was only 12. I had a lot of people there for me, but the one who was there for me the most was my best friend, 19F. She was by my side the whole time. Whenever I had to go to hospital for chemotherapy treatment, she was always there messaging me, making sure I was okay. When I arrived back in school, I had joined a drama club, which was after school, and lasted about an hour and a half. There was one guy in this club that I did not get along with at all. I'm gay and have knew for a while, and after a month of being back at school, I had told my closest friends and they were all supportive. But like everything in high school, word got round to other students, and TBH, I didn't mind all too much, but this guy in the club found out and was extremely homophobic towards me, telling me I should leave the school because no one would want to talk to me anymore, and started bringing up hurtful stuff about my cancer. I had not long beat such as, "It should have taken your life," and "It's a shame you beat it." Fast forwarding to now, we are celebrating 6 years of me being clear of it. We have a meal every year to celebrate. It usually consists of me, my family, my boyfriend, 22M, who I've been with for almost 2 years, and my closest friends. My best friend started dating this guy 5 months, and I found out a few weeks into their relationship it was the same guy who said all that hurtful stuff to me 6 years ago. I spoke to her about it and agreed to give him another chance as she seemed genuinely happy with him and had insisted he had changed. Me and him still don't get along, but I don't interfere with their relationship as she is the happiest she has been for a while. She then asked a few days ago if he could come to the meal that I was holding for my 6 years clear. I was pretty hesitant and told her that as much as I'm happy for her being with someone she likes, he was awful to me in high school and I can't forgive him for what he was like. I also told her that he still doesn't like me, as he has made that obvious about a month ago, when he said something to another close friend of mine about me and my boyfriend. She is now calling me childish and started saying I should just forget about it. She also said, if he doesn't come, she isn't going to either. I don't know what to do, and I don't know whether to forget everything and let him join in the meal or deny her request of him joining and deal with the consequences of her not joining either. So AITA for not forgetting what he had done and denying my friend's request of him joining. OP is not an AH for setting her boundaries. It is pathetic to make hurtful comment about a cancer patient. It is disrespectful and completely unjustifiable. OP's friend's boyfriend is an AH, a big AH for making such negative comments. What OP did is completely justifiable. As for scores, I would rate her friend's boyfriend 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. AITA for leaving my boyfriend over his new best female friend. My boyfriend, 32M, and I, 28F, moved to a new city a little over 7 months ago. Before that, he was unemployed while I supported him. We both got new jobs and decided to move cities. During the move, he didn't want to help me pack move boxes or travel back and forth to transport things. While it upset me and I told him so, all he was willing to do was help me a max of 2 weekends with the big furniture. When the weekends came upon us, he paid some guys to do the work for us. In his defense, he did help me clean the apartment a little bit. I would say most of the move and the stress of moving fell onto me though. This is where the troubles began. When we moved in, he set up an office for himself and refused to help me get furniture and decorate the place. Due to the prior financial struggles we endured, we were on a budget, So I furnished the house with Facebook Marketplace items. He never seemed to love the place. We really didn't have a ton of money, so we stopped going on dates and spending romantic quality time together while we paid off our debts. This really upset me, and I felt he was taking me for granted after a while. Even after we could start affording dates, we didn't go. I have been really upset about this, and I told him as much. It's also worth mentioning he makes $1,500 to $2,000 USD average a week, while I make under $2,000 USD a month. I took this huge pay cut to be with him in this new city, and I'm also in a job I am overqualified for. So, it's worth mentioning, my 50% looks different from his 50%, but we are supposed to be splitting things 50 by 50 financially. I pay the bills. He's supposed to pay for groceries and dates. This is important for the context of the story. Fast forward, we start making friends and get invited to a friend's birthday. I beg him to go. Finally, he caved in because I've been so upset at the lack of effort he's put into our relationship. He views spending time with mutual friends a sacrifice he has to make to be in a relationship with me. We get to the party, and that's where we meet Michelle. Michelle and my boyfriend hit it off immediately. They have pretty much the same interests, the same hobbies, similar life experiences. They just talked all through dinner while I tried to make friends with the other people there. At the end of dinner, while everyone got up to leave, they stayed back to talk and exchange contact information. At this point, I felt something in my gut and just wanted to leave. I felt like if I slipped away, he wouldn't even notice I was gone. That's how closely they were talking, and how little I had been included. I just had this feeling. It was this knot, like something bad was going to happen between the three of us. He was touching her arms, flirting. I tried to push my insecurities aside and be happy he was making new friends. I just couldn't shake this feeling. With that, I offered to help carry my friend's gifts and things back to the car. To my surprise, my boyfriend noticed and followed me. Later that night, we went to a dance club. Michelle showed up and spoke to my boyfriend briefly after this, but the rest of the night, I decided I was just insecure for no reason, and needed to give Michelle a chance because she seemed like a nice person. Fast forward, I find out she invited my boyfriend to a Discord server and to a Magic the Gathering night. I texted her, got the phone number from my boyfriend, to ask if I could be invited, which she did. While I did feel insecure about how fast their friendship was growing, I genuinely wanted to get to know her. I learned how to play Magic the Gathering, and found out I really liked the game, and I really liked Michelle. I thought she was a good, trustworthy person. Meanwhile, my relationships with my boyfriend continued to suffer as he refused to go on dates and spend time with me outside of his hobbies. Recently, our friend group had another person, someone who was being problematic. Let's call her Bella. I just so happened to be one of Bella's targets. I kept how I felt about what was going on close to my chest for a month before finally opening up to my boyfriend over the phone about it. He ended our call early to call Michelle and tell her everything I told him in confidence. I found out later after the fact when he and I were discussing things. I felt super betrayed. I didn't realize he was calling her to talk on the phone. He claimed this was the first time this happened and that his actions were innocent. I told him it made me uncomfortable and I felt disrespected. When I brought it up to him, he agreed we needed to work on things between us and start going on dates again, which never happened. Then, 3 weeks ago, Michelle asked him to watch her dogs. She gave him her house key, and they both neglected to tell me about it until I caught him leaving to go to her place one day. He had the house key for several days before she left. He did tell me as he was leaving he was going to her house to watch her dogs when I caught him, but the whole thing rubbed me the wrong way. There was a lot of secrecy around his relationship with her. I told him that I was concerned his relationship with her had evolved into an emotional affair. He insisted it wasn't like that, and this was all a big miscommunication. Everything in my gut was telling me something was wrong. That pesky feeling was back. At this point, we still had not gone on a date. After I caught him with the key, he finally took me out half-heartedly to a bar where we each got a drink, ate toast, and went home under 30 minutes without talking much. He called it a date. In hindsight, I'm disappointed in how happy I was to just get this sad evening with him. Once she returned, he was pushing me to go to the mall with him to shop for presents for people for Christmas. There are 2 malls in our city. One is smaller than the other. I am not a huge fan of malls, so I suggested we just go to the smaller one together to check it out. He wanted to go to the bigger one, so he immediately asked Michelle to go with him. He wanted to spend the day with her at the mall. I was upset. His response was, "She's there to do things with me you don't want to." This led to fight, and I asked him to please treat this outing as casual as possible, no date-like or borderline flirty stuff. He agreed, so I felt okay about it. The day of, he wore a nice button-down and work pants with boots. He looked like he was going on a date. I explicitly, the night before, begged him to be casual about this outing with her. He felt, where he is from, people dress up nice to go to the mall, and I was being controlling. This led to a huge fight between us. He won, and I apologized. I was in the wrong for telling him how to dress. This still felt to me like he went on a date with her, but I bit my tongue. After the mall trip, I told him I was upset, so I got my second date. During the date, he asked me why I felt so insecure about his and Michelle's relationship, so I told him everything. The moment I met her and saw them together, how I had this gut feeling. He got mad at me. We ended the date fighting and I was feeling guilty. A day after we talked, she messaged him asking how he was doing. He asked me if he could tell her his feelings, causing me to feel guilty all over again. I basically told him I trusted him and want him to be truthful. I really do believe honesty is the best policy. I hoped me doing this would show him I do trust him. This might have been a mistake. They spoke on the phone for 2 hours. He had me leave the room, and I respected his wishes because I wanted to show him I trusted him. He told me some of what was said, but I'm not sure I believed it anymore. It's worth noting he started trying to show me his phone, claiming I was being controlling. I never asked to see his phone, and I didn't feel comfortable with him acting like I was accusing them of anything, because I wasn't at that point in time. I just was concerned how fast this friendship evolved over just 2 months. It made me uncomfortable. I really did trust him though. I just was starting to doubt everything, because his words and actions weren't lining up. It's also worth noting that during the mall trip, she helped him realize he doesn't want to get married. He was able to discuss his divorce with her in a way that helped him realize this apparently. He came home and told me that he didn't want to ever get married after this trip, which was a shock and news to me. He felt marriage just strips men of all their money. This honestly broke my heart, but I tried to be positive and supportive. I told him he should talk to a therapist to help him with his past trauma. He is strongly against therapy and feels he already graduated it. The following day was Michelle's birthday. I was hoping to have a one-on-one coffee with her after her birthday to talk to her about things, but she called my boyfriend, telling him she wanted to talk to me at her party. The fact she wasn't texting me directly or calling me made me super uncomfortable. He told her we should talk at the party about things so we could resolve them before her trip. He has this phone call without me there. I would have preferred to wait. At the party, she avoided us the whole time, which is fair. At the end of the party, when there were only a few guests left, I approached her and asked if she was open to talking after the party. She asked me if I wanted to talk then and there, which I told her I honestly didn't want to do, but I was eager to resolve things. I asked her where she wanted to talk. She asked if I wanted to sit at the dining room table or go somewhere else. The last 4 guests were in the other rooms, so I said dining room for privacy. During the talk, she apologized to me and said she never meant to hurt me or cause me to feel insecure and hurt. I never told her I felt these things. I reassured her she had nothing to apologize to me for, and that this was all a miscommunication, that I would love to avoid these sorts of things in the future. I asked if we could talk more and establish boundaries and work on transparency because I felt it was lacking in our relationships. She said nothing. I asked her if she wanted to share anything or tell me how she is feeling or add any input. She did not. During our talk, my boyfriend came into the room and sat at the end of the table to listen. Afterwards, I thought the conversation went okay enough. Her silence didn't really sit easy with me, but I didn't want to read into it. The next day, we came over to the house to play Magic the Gathering. She left early and avoided us like the plague. I honestly was really upset. I had really hoped we resolved things. The next day, while I was at work, my boyfriend called her, and they talked on the phone, and he spoke to her on our behalf without giving me a heads up. Apparently, she thought I was weird, and she did not feel the conversation went well. She feels I cornered her and forced her to talk to me in the middle of her party. I took him for pizza that night, and he told me about their conversation. He kept trying to show me his phone. I was really uncomfortable. She and my boyfriend proceeded to text the rest of the night because she was bored and needed company. This, of course, upset me even more, and we had a fight. The rest of the week, he avoided me. I sent her a text basically reiterating everything I had said and told her I wanted to talk more when she got back, but to enjoy her trip. Tonight, I was promised a date night. It went well. Or so I thought. It felt like he was actually present and kind of trying at dinner. Afterwards, we came home, and he said he needed to talk to me. He told me he has feelings for Michelle. He told her, and she's known for a while how he feels. I was devastated. He told me he likes her a lot, but he is choosing me and that I have nothing to worry about. I thanked him for his honesty and asked him if this meant he would distance himself from her. He said no. He wants to spend more time with her and would be picking her up from the airport in the next few days. He was willing to work on things, though. When I asked him what he meant by that, he said he would stay with me and not have the sex with her despite my insecurities. All he needed was for me to trust him. I was floored. Is this what he meant by, "we will work on things"? I asked him to clarify what behavior he was going to change to get our relationship to work, and he verified none. He doesn't see what he did wrong. This for me was the last straw. I broke up with him. I'm at a friend's house now trying to figure out what to do, especially with the holidays upon us. We were supposed to host my family. I'm not sure I can find a place in time to host everyone. My now ex-boyfriend thinks I'm being jealous and insecure because his new best friend is a girl. He has feelings for her and isn't willing to distance himself to work on our failing relationship. He doesn't see anything wrong with developing feelings for her and not having boundaries. He can't understand why I'm upset and why I can't trust him. I honestly feel justified due to communicating at length how I wanted him to start working on our relationship, prioritizing me as much as he is her. Lastly, asking him to ease up on his fast-growing relationship with Michelle for a bit until we figured ourselves out and he got therapy for managing his relationships and his past traumas. Again, I don't hate Michelle or think she is bad. I think she looks bad right now due to what he has said to me. I feel like there is more that I'm not seeing or understanding in this. I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt till she comes home and we can talk. I hate this situation, and I feel like my relationship ended before my eyes in smoke and mirrors with Michelle at the center. I honestly can't tell up from down or left from right in this relationship anymore. I honestly don't know what to do. Even writing this out, I wonder if I could have handled this differently. AITA? OP is not an AH. Her boyfriend is an AH for being unfaithful in his relationship with OP and continuously neglecting her. OP's decision to break up with him is 100% justified. As for scores, I would rate OP's boyfriend 3.5 out of 5, and OP stands at 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from OK-Avocado, 9180. AITA for refusing parents and in-laws to stay with us before, during, and after birth. I, 34F, and my husband, 40M, are finally expecting our first child, after a few miscarriages and a lot of complications, pain, and issues with endometriosis. 5 week 3 days pregnant now, but discussing the estimated birth date and expectations around it resulted in a mild to strong disagreement and unhappiness on both our sides. Some context as to why I am thinking so far ahead. Other than that is my personality to look into all possible scenarios and plan it out. We moved to a new continent 2 years ago, and all our family is still on home continent, which is at best a 12-hour flight away, and you need a visa. This being said, parents can't just come as and when they please, but needs to be invited, in writing and with proof from our side for visa purposes. We also pay for their flights usually. We have been trying to get pregnant for a while, but also had loose plans to both visit our home country and have both sets of parents visit next year. We finally got a positive result and are elated, but it means I will not be fit to fly for our 2-week planned visit home. Thus that will need to be cancelled and moved to an earlier or later date. The birth, if on exactly 40 weeks, will also coincide with the dates we were talking about, having both sets of parents over. Summer, so easier time to get off work. The due date will be on day 20 of my in-laws' 24-day planned visit, and on day 14 of my parents' 28-day visit. They would have overlapped for the majority of their stays. Setup. We have a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house which is relatively spacious. Baby will be in our room regardless. My home office will accommodate 1 set of parents on an IDEA sleeper couch. The living room will be divided and accommodate the other set of parents on another sleeper couch. We have outside space. We were also originally planning to be out and about quite a bit and maybe all go somewhere else for a week. Obviously, mobility and proximity to hospital will hinder any trips we might have considered. Relationships? I love both our sets of parents equally. My in-laws are sometimes even a lot easier to manage than my own parents due to being super laid back and happy to just be around. We had a small bit of strain with my own parents at a point, but only due to some religious expectations that has smoothed over completely. All 4 parents are amazing and we know they love both of us equally and would be super excited for a new grandbaby. Please don't get me wrong, I really won the in-law lottery, with my FIL being just a steady, stable, simple man, and MIL honestly the least intrusive and most considerate person there is. My own mom is my mom, and aside from my husband is probably one of the few people that can handle me when I stress as I withdraw completely and just want to deal with it myself. She is the best mom and will stay quiet and just come and help out and bring you snacks and see to things around the house. My dad is in the medical field and still has a somewhat military habit around keeping communal spaces clean, even when he visits. Now, the problem. We have not told them of the pregnancy due to prior miscarriages, but I very strongly do not in any way want any family around before and right after the birth, likely for at the very least 2 weeks. I raised this point with my husband earlier, as this will need to be raised with them, and we will need to mention that both our and their travel plans would need to change to a more suitable time. He disagrees with this and made a good argument about how excited our parents would be and how they would love to be here for it all. I cannot in any way think of something that stresses me out more. I am a very private person, especially when it comes to suffering and struggling. I do it by myself, otherwise I put up a brave front, which is completely and utterly exhausting. I have had to mask so much pain with endometriosis on a regular basis, and after a day of that at, for example, work, I am just dead inside and want to just be quiet and lie on the couch with heat on my abdomen. My husband and I are both introverts and do most of life by ourselves. I just do not want a house full of people while starting contractions and having a full-on family meeting on when is a good idea to go to the hospital and then facing all of them the moment we step back into our house. I have been stressing about this so much in the last few hours that I almost thought a miscarriage might be a blessing, and to rather try again to just get the family month over so I can give birth in peace. My expectations, if it were to have everyone around here, my mom and dad will be super helpful and get around and support, but still, I don't want that many people. They are also very independent and would leave and go away for a few days if they sensed I needed space. My mom knows me in this sense and does not take offense. My MIL is an angel on this earth and gives so much of herself freely and will do her best to support. She is also very excitable and super chatty. It is because they miss us, and I really do love it and appreciate it. But it might get a bit much when you do not want to talk. IL's travel date is also limited to these exact times due to my mile still working, and she has that time off. My FIL is salt of this earth, usually quiet, but very happy to be around family. He has apparently become conversation-starved since retiring. He is very practical, but generally not very handy around the kitchen or house, and usually myself, my husband, or my Mael usually waits on him for food and drinks. They are less independent, and will be here on our budget, and we usually cover all their costs and move around with them. I have the fear that either my husband will feel to entertain them and take the car for day trips, which will make me nervous around the birth date. I also feel that he will then be torn between the hospital and coming back and updating everyone at home. It is just us two and our 2 cats usually. I hate big circuses and fanfares of people. We had both an elopement, COVID, and then followed with a wedding. The elopement for me was perfect. The wedding was okay and had some really nice highlights, amazing photos, and was good to share with our families and friends. But I almost cancelled the wedding 50 times leading up to it due to having to deal with all the people. I also felt super out of place on my kitchen tea before the wedding, even while I appreciated it tons. I don't like being the center of attention. How would you navigate this? I don't want to be insensitive, but I really do not want people around during that time. My parents, I think, will definitely understand and give us the space, but my husband seems to feel quite strongly that his parents would love it and that it would be special. It would definitely be a little bit driven by the fact that his mom's holiday would work best during that time. Thank you all. OP is not an AH here. She just wants privacy for which she has every right. She is not against her parents and in-laws, just wants space. So, she is not an AH here. OP's husband, wish that his parents be with him, is okay. But not at this time when his wife need privacy. OP's husband must respect her. He is being a little bit an AH, and I would rate him a 1 out of 5 on the AH scale. And OP gets nothing. Now let's move on to the next story from Baby Butterfly Dash. AITA for not forgiving mom for childhood abuse. I, female mid-20s, had a very intense childhood growing up. My mother and father never got along, and every day was a screaming match, either on the bills or school fees or groceries, to the point my 2 siblings and I were desensitized to the violence. My dad worked hard, but he would pick fights with my mom to ask her parents for money, because he would somehow have no money after working all day. In our culture, men were primary breadwinners while women handled the household. My mom would save up money she got us as gifts and manage our clothing, food that way. One thing that ticked my mom was how my father had a preference for me over my elder sister. He was stricter and more stringent with her, but would give me flexibility. For example, when money was tight, he suggested my mom change something in my sister's life. When my mom got angry because she didn't want to disrupt her daughter's life, she asked him to change mine instead since I was young, 5, and could cope. He immediately dropped the subject. However, this translated into a cycle of my mother intentionally leaving me out of things and focus on my sister, thinking my father would cater to me. And then he would have to step up because mom would ignore me, provide food, clothes, even emotional comfort. They fought regularly. However, every time they fought, my mom would be agitated and would sometimes take it out on us siblings, me plus elder. 1. Once my dad had an argument with mom in front of a delivery guy at the gate, and he slapped her. So she came inside and beat me with a wooden stick on my legs so she could hurt him, because according to her, I was his favorite. 2. Once she took my clothes and locked me out in the garage in scorching hot afternoon because of something I did. I was 7, I can't honestly remember anything of what I did, just that she came outside to dry the laundry and saw me and blanched because she had forgotten she had punished me. She took me inside, asked my sister to give me clothes, and told me I wasn't to take her punishment literally. This is the only time I've admitted it. Standing outside in just your underwear, not knowing who can see you and burning your skin off in the sun, it sometimes feels I can feel the burn again. 3. My father fell sick and was bedridden, and he had come back from the hospital. I had my finals then. She walked in on me reading a novel when I had a final tomorrow, so she slapped me. Then she beat me with a metal pipe on my hands and back till it bruised, and I was half unconscious because of the pain. I was 14. I scored a 100% in that exam the next morning. 4. My elder sister was playing on my phone and I asked her not to. She refused, so I hit her on her knee. She was sitting cross-legged in front of me. She hit me back, so I slapped her. I knew I messed up and let her hit me again, but she slapped me and scratched my cheek so deep I bled till my neck. I didn't say anything but went to bed later, woken up when my other sibling brought my mom to show what had happened. My mom swept it under the rug, and the next day, Dad told me to behave and no reprimand to her. 5. She placed a burning match on my tongue because I said a curse word. Once she put red chilies and wouldn't give me water. I was 9. 6. Elder sister and I raced to the washroom to shower once, and I tried to close the door but accidentally closed it on her hand, and she started ranting. My mom was praying, and she calmly got up and slapped me too many times in a second that I lost consciousness. It all stopped once I turned 19 and could stand up for myself. She changed too, became calmer. But sometimes when she's talking, I can't help but wonder why she hated me. I was her child. I bring it up in conversations and she tells me to stop overreacting, and that it wasn't that serious and I need to move on. We have worked on our relationship and are much closer. It came up the other day, and she got agitated and mad that I kept reminding her how she used to beat me, and she told me to stop being childish. So, am I wrong here? OP is not an AH. She is a victim of childhood abuse from her mother, both physically and emotionally. Her mother is an AH for abusing her child. As for scores, I would rate OP's mother 4 out of 5, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump onto the last story for this video from Throw Away the Audacity, AITA for Taking Everything in My Divorce. Just got divorced after 12 years. We have 2 kids, 13, M, and 10, F. I initiated the divorce, and he is still not happy with it, and tried to pressure me into staying for the kids, even though I had been doing that for years, even though it was destroying me mentally. He has a lot of issues in life and a lot of resentment for me, and that informed the way he treated me every day. I didn't want to tear my family apart, but I was a shell of myself who spent a year unable to get out of bed from depression before I finally pulled the trigger on my marriage and turned my entire life around this summer. As such, I proceeded with the divorce I asked for in July, and it was finalized yesterday. We didn't have much by way of property. A house that was bought 3 years ago, which I bought solely on my credit, but later added him to the deed as double insurance that my kids would retain access to the house I purchased for them to grow up in and always have their space. We also had a car, this time purchased in his name, but I paid the down payment, and it was considered my car because he has a work vehicle. Because I have the children Sunday evening through Friday evening, I asked to keep possession of the house for the sake of stability and routine. My ex works out of town Monday, Thursday, or Friday mostly, so they are primarily with me all week, and I'm the one who gets them on and off the bus. My ex agreed to both of these things in his response petition, but later balked at paying for half of the property taxes, insurance, or at other upkeep, even though he expected 50% of the proceeds of a future sale, regardless, before deciding he wants off the deed entirely, so he has no responsibility for it, which I am fine with, and have already looked into a quit-claim deed. I have been a stay-at-home mom for 11 years. Technically, I was legally entitled to both alimony and child support, but I told him I would waive both since, until recently, we made more or less the same, and I wanted my kids to have an equal standard of living at both places. I didn't want to make him struggle because then they suffer. I've been there as the kid. Now I make slightly less. Let me preface all of this by saying he did not show up to court, though he accused me for weeks of having gotten a lawyer behind his back, that he knew I was up to something, etc. But really, I had no nefarious plans, no matter how many people kept telling me to take him for everything he's worth. We filed our petition and response at the same time, got our documents notarized together. I was fine with all of it. Yet still, he did not show because he didn't want to be there. In my state, all divorces with minor children require you to put your income and custody percentage into a formula, and it automatically calculates the amount, and then it's up to the judge's discretion as to what they think is fair. It's not optional. Based on their formula, I have the kids 72% of the time. The judge ordered a substantial but not insurmountable amount of CS, and my ex has flipped his shit. He's accusing me of lying about it being up to the judge, saying I lied about my income. I didn't. That I went behind his back and requested it, and that I'm not a person of my word because I don't have a problem with the judge ordering it and intend to collect it. The way I see it, the kids are with me almost 3 out of 4 of the time. All of my bills but my mortgage and car payment, I am paying the car off, not him, are going to be much higher because of how much more time the kids are with me. And while he sees this as a just punishment for me leaving, the reality is that I agree with the family court system. I'm handling more than 50% of the costs of raising them. Regarding custody, he has 50 out of 50 decisions making, 50 by 50 split of all holidays and birthdays, as well as his own birthday and Father's Day. He gets them every single weekend, because that is the only time he is guaranteed to be in town, and didn't want to just see them every other week, so I accommodated this request. The judge asked me if it was okay to start the CS on December 1st, but I said with the holidays and the short notice that I was fine waiting for January 1st, and also said he could pay me directly instead of making him go through the bureau, and I am still more than willing to give him a share of the eventually sale equal to the amount of time he spent living here and paying his share of the mortgage relative to how much longer I live here. And yet, he is still calling me vile and telling me what a villain I am, when in my view, I've been more than fair. The things I'm getting in the divorce, I still have to pay for 100% by myself. The amount will not break him, and he has multiple monthly bonus options that will alone cover it. Like I said, I forewent alimony because I don't need it, but I think the CS is valid. Nothing else the judge ordered was outside of the paperwork we filed jointly back in August. OP is not an AH. Her demand for divorce and 50 by 50 custody of the children is completely reasonable. Kudos to OP, who after enduring the toxic marriage for 12 years, finally stood up for herself and her children. You need courage for taking such a bold step after being submissive for such a long time. OP's husband is an AH from every aspect, and I would rate him the 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. AITA for telling my husband his friend can't come to our house. My 38F husband, 45M, has a lifelong friend. This friend royally screwed us over financially. He tricked my husband into quitting his good-paying job, packing up our stuff, and moving with the promise that he could make money working for him. My husband did the work over a period of months and never got paid. His friend kept all of their earnings, while my husband quite literally did all of the work and even paid for some of the materials. Plus, used some of his own personal materials. Meanwhile, I had to work a fast food job to keep our bills paid. I'm not above that, but I have an extensive administrative background with high-paying jobs. But none of these jobs existed in this tiny town, so that's what I was stuck with. We eventually found out that this friend owed a lot of people money, employees, friends, family. He basically lives off other people's money and labor, including his own wife, whose paycheck gets direct deposited into his account, and she would complain to me that she doesn't even have gas money. When people started chasing my husband for money, since he was now the face of the business, asking where his friend was, including the IRS, it became embarrassing and we finally moved away. Husband and I reconciled amazingly. It was a tough time for me, and I was often blamed for the situation, and even gaslit by his friend who told me I was fat, ugly, greedy, and didn't understand how business worked. My husband only insisted on staying for so long because he wanted to live closer to his children from a previous marriage, who happened to live there. So I understood his point of view and forgive him for putting us through that. Anyways, 5 years passed after this, and we never heard from the friend. Husband and I rebuilt our life, and now run a successful business and also purchased a house. Guess I do know how business works after all, huh? I was over it, at least until this friend creeped back into his life recently. He said he was getting kicked out of his living space, made up some elaborate story, which I am positive is bullshit. And I think that really, he was just in search of some place to go. And maybe he thought he could get something out of my husband. My husband, thankfully, is not helping him there, but he wants to give him another chance to be friends. He wants to invite him to our house, have our children play together, and I'm left feeling like I have to relive this nightmare all over again. I want nothing to do with this person, and I absolutely cannot allow this person into my home or near my children. I don't even trust him not to physically steal things from our home. My husband is now blaming me for interfering with his friendship, since I won't let him at the house. I said, maybe you should blame your friend for his behavior, or get better friends. I didn't pick him, and he makes me uncomfortable. It's just too bad IMO. But here I am being accused of being the bad guy. Deja vu of what that put us through all those years ago. AITA for wanting nothing to do with this person, and making my husband's friendship difficult by not allowing him to come over. TL, DR, husband's friend screwed us financially, disrespected me, and now my husband wants to invite him over after several years. AITA for not wanting the friend in our home. Edit. Just wanted to add, since a lot of people had concerns, my husband is in no way allowing this person to go into business with us or make any kind of business dealings. We've already discussed and both agreed on this. As for our finances, I have full access to all of it. My name is on everything, and my husband isn't savvy enough to siphon money in the way some of you are thinking. Not to mention, he simply wouldn't do that. He has a friend and made a dumb decision. He's not some monster who's going to steal money out of our bank account. Edit #2. Please stop telling me I need to blame my husband for what happened. I already do. Edit #3. Just wanted to mention, the friend has not, at this point, stepped foot on our property. Some of you seem to think he comes over or is staying here. He messaged my husband almost a year ago when he was getting kicked out of his place. He's living somewhere else now, and messages my husband just every few months or so. He messaged him the other day again, and that's why I decided to bring it up. OP is not an AH for standing up to protect her family's stability and peace from her husband's so-called friend, who betrayed them both emotionally and financially in the past, and ruined their reputation. OP's husband's desire to reconnect is unreasonable. As for scores, I would rate OP 0, and her husband's friend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story. From No-Platypus, 1486. AITA for refusing to go on a family trip from which my partner was abruptly uninvited. For the last 8 or 9 months, I, 28F, and my partner, 30M of 3 years, have been under the impression that we were both invited on a 2-week trip to my family's country of origin that will happen this coming June. My mother, who traveled there with my youngest sibling, 16, in summer, 23, at the invitation of my siblings' friends' family, who are also from this country, pitched the idea of the trip to my siblings and me around January 2024, and said she also hoped her sister and brother-in-law, my aunt and uncle, and their children would want to come. When my mom first mentioned the trip to me, I asked if my partner could also come. She said yes, and since then she has talked about it to both of us, in front of him at least a few times. We have been saving up and recently found neighbors to watch our dog. About 4 or 5 months ago, my aunt and uncle also decided to come on the trip. My mom and aunt are very close, and my aunt and uncle have been extraordinarily generous with our family in the past, helping my mom, and by extension my siblings and me, through a long period of financial difficulty following my parents' divorce. 2 weeks ago, I received an email from my aunt about the trip, saying the invitation was not being extended to either my partner or my cousin's partner, who, as far as I know, had never planned on coming on the trip in the first place. They have only attended 2 family holidays in the near decade that my cousin has been dating them. My partner, on the other hand, is much more integrated into my family and comes to my younger siblings' recitals and graduations, our family dinners, etc. I was confused, because the way the email was written did not acknowledge that my partner had been invited on the trip from the get-go, months before my aunt and uncle decided to come. I wrote back expressing that my mom had originally made it seem my partner would be welcome, and that I thought it would be incredibly hurtful to my partner to revoke his invitation, and that it would feel like our family was rejecting him. I also mentioned that we were planning not only to pay for our own expenses, but to contribute to the overall family fund for the trip to help cover expenses for others as well. My aunt wrote back saying that now that she and my uncle are on the trip, it is a completely different trip, and the old trip no longer exists. She said that having my partner along would change the family dynamic, and that they want it to be just our family. I wrote back asserting that to me, my partner is family too. We've been together for 3 years, have lived together for 2, and own a house and 3 animals together. We are also planning to get married after he finishes school this spring. I said I wouldn't feel right about coming on the trip if he is no longer invited. The tenor of my aunt's emails became angrier, and she insisted that since he and I are not currently married, my partner doesn't count as part of our family. I offered that we could go to a courthouse and get married before June, if that would make them more comfortable and willing to have him along on the trip. And she wrote back that I was being ridiculous and impulsive, and that I needed to consider whether being with him was making me a better or worse person. She also told me that I need to stop putting my family second and think about their needs too. I emailed her back offering the compromise that if my partner came, he could give us some days to do activities and have meals together just as an immediate family, and go off and explore on his own. She did not accept this compromise and still said the dynamic will be affected. All this time, there was also no word from my mom, either to me or to my partner. She finally emailed me this past weekend, saying that while she feels badly to my partner, I need to think about what my aunt and uncle want as well, since this trip back to our country of origin is so huge for them, and neither of them has been back in over 40 years. She then said that our family has done so much for my partner, and that he should show love and graciousness to them by telling me to go without him. For the record, my partner has told me to go without him because he thinks the way my aunt is treating me is abusive, and he doesn't want me to have to continue going through all this stress. For me, this is a hill I am willing to die on, because I feel that them putting me in this position is incredibly insulting to both my partner and to me. The additional context of all of this is that my mom has a history of acting out whenever I have had a serious relationship. The worst was in summer 2021, when she essentially kicked me out of her house because she was offended that I asked if we could reschedule a family game night so I could see my then-boyfriend when he came through town. She said things like, "I hate your guts," and told me I was a harm to my brothers, and that it would be better for everyone if I left. She was then so angry when I did get an apartment of my own and move out that she barely spoke to me for months. Things have been better between us recently, though. I am worried that I am the here because I am being so inflexible about the fact that their plans changed and haven't been willing to accept the notion that this is a whole different trip now that my aunt and uncle are coming. I do get, at least intellectually, the desire for an immediate family-only trip back to our country of origin, but I just don't think you can invite someone and then disinvite them. especially someone's partner. My family seems to think that this is okay to do, given the importance of the trip to our immediate family, and the fact that my aunt and uncle have both worked incredibly hard and always been incredibly generous with my mom and siblings and me, helping us through a lot of financial difficulty. My aunt also told me not to tell my cousins what happened, which pissed me off because it made me think they were going to lie about why I wasn't coming on the trip. So I forwarded the whole email exchange to my cousins and my siblings. In the past, when my mom has gotten angry at me, she has presented an inaccurate picture of me to my siblings and aunt. Forwarding the email against my aunt's wishes might also make me the asshole. I have only heard sporadically from a couple of my siblings in response to some of my messages to them. And that's it. No one has reached out. TLDR. My family initially invited my partner of 3 years on a trip back to our country of origin. They have now suddenly uninvited him because of the way they think having him there will affect the family dynamic. We were going to not only pay our own way, but help cover overall expenses for the family as well. And my partner even offered to give the family time to ourselves on the trip. Family still won't budge, and since I am not going, are treating me as though I have done something terribly wrong. AITA. OP is not an AH for standing up for her partner. It is unfair on the part of OP's family to abruptly uninvite her long-term partner after initially inviting him. It is really humiliating and dismissive of their relationship, which also disregarded their months of planning and savings. Money should not be the problem here. The real issue is that OP's family doesn't consider OP's partner a part of the family. I would suggest that OP not compromise, and instead refuse to attend the event. If your family doesn't respect your partner, it means they also don't respect you. The best option is to decline the trip. In terms of scores, OP's aunt is an AH, and deserves at least a 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, while OP is not at fault. Let's now jump onto the next story from Ornery Bookkeeper 8115. AITA for refusing to go to confession so I can take communion in my brother's wedding. I, 31F, have 3 siblings, 40M, 38F, 27M, and we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married, and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother, Luke, is engaged to his GF of a year, Emma, 28F. She is nice, I guess, but we have never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something important is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke, and it has always been a sibling joke that I am truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume he is older than me, but nobody has had issues with it until Emma. The day I met her, she kind of scoffed. When I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend, she has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She has been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I am just polite and civil, always include her when planning stuff, but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it, but we just shrugged it to different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided I could not be in the wedding party since I was not married in a church. Fine by me. Then she requested that immediate family submits their dress plannings so she could check it, fits the wedding dress code. Fine, whatever. You see where this is going, I hope? You'll see I have not gone to confession or have communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason, I am respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites I don't participate on. Well, this is not good enough for her, and she says I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no, and she has not taken it well. For the most part, I avoid her as I said before, but this time I wasn't going to say yes or risk an issue. I told her for taking communion, one needs to go to confession, and I didn't want to. She said all immediate family is doing it. And it will look bad if I don't, I told her. Sure, fine. Then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody, but won't do confession. She said if this was going to be my attitude, I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him, thanks, gave him a thumbs up and went home. My family understand my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices, but I shouldn't have said what I said. I told them I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore, and I don't owe Emma explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it, and she is fine with me now. I got a text from my brother wanting to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made to take confession too. He said no, because it was only nuclear family members. I find it funny since all the others are clearly older than her, and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. AITA? Update. Things have moved, but I wouldn't call any of this a positive progress. I would like to clear something I kept seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go in the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise, but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issue with compromises. I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young, but not like a teen or a child, obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I have witnesses, her being very my way or the highway with younger people, so she has issues for sure. The confrontation from the last post was on Tuesday, and today we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship, as in, they are not as close with each other as they are with other siblings. My older brother, Robert, is very no-nonsense, and he has never been a fan of Emma, but he didn't think he should have to intervene, because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships. All this is going to be relevant, I promise. We visit Grandma a lot since she lives by herself, and we truly enjoy her company. Today we were all there because she is over this drama already. After a lunch, that was more like snacking to be honest, she asked us all to clear the air. Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person, and that she was asking the bare minimum from me. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking communion, and Emma said that she was her elder, and for sure her reasons were more than a tantrum like it was in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all the siblings, and I was the only one that was being difficult with her tiny request. This is where everything crumbled for her. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed and he was already exhausted by this situation. He asked her why she had no issues with him not taking communion, and she looked like a kid that was caught. She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew why he and Grandma became lapsed. She shook her head and looked at Luke for help. Luke, on the other hand, was staring angrily at Robert and I, but said nothing. Robert explained to Emma he was the reason Grandma became lapsed. When Robert was a teen, he came out as gay, and was so worried about our grandparents' reaction since they were very active in the Catholic Church. Grandma felt awful about it, and even worse when she went and spoke about this with the then priest of her church. That priest was super old school and told her that Robert was committing sins, he was going to hell, he needed to find his way. The whole 9 yards. Grandma didn't take that so well and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years, she started getting into the whole community again, but she decided she was done taking the sacraments. She respects parts of the church but can't fully reconcile with it. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman, and he explained he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have ended with a man. He also commented they are not married in the church, but that didn't matter to her like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I also was very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman, so I still don't understand her obsession, but it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person, and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. More was said, nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again, but declined, going, Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh, and yes, Grandma spoke with the priest and he wants them to do extra premarital counseling or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he is old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent, and my grandma loved the Pope joke. Update 2. My brother has gone too far and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry, and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I want to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought I was just stubborn and creating drama. But now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called her to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened, and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help since he was her favorite grandchild, and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believed this, and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBTQ+ members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out by the way, doubted if she would do it for them. So, Grandma explained to Luke and then call every single one of her grandchildren to ask them how they felt and explain to each a part we didn't know. She said that when Robert came out and she spoke with the old priest, he hinted about knowing of places to set Robert straight. Grandma had heard horror stories from this place, and so had Robert, and they both spoke with my parents together about that not being an option at all. My parents never intended to send Robert there, and are very casual Catholics, but Grandma wanted to cover the bases just in case. I was told Grandma sounded like she had been crying on the phone, and after the first couple of calls, which went from oldest to youngest, the group chat started to blow. Robert is livid, our LGBTQ+ cousins are livid, and say Luke lied. Even the cousins that were telling me to stop being a stubborn head are livid. By the time I was up for my call, I was already on the way to Grandma's. 2 of my cousins were already there, and the youngest one, Sarah, 16F, was ready to literally fight Luke. For a bit of levity, Sarah is about 35 centimeters smaller than Luke, and the image of her swinging at him made me laugh a bit. She asked if I was making fun of her, and I just explained the whole mental image of her trying to hit him, and she admitted it was kind of funny. What I didn't tell her is I would love to slap some sense into Luke. My grandma has been through so much in her life, and this is not what we want for her. She looks puffy-faced and kept asking everybody if they truly felt unloved by her, saying she would do everything for any of us, explaining how Robert was the oldest grandchild, but that didn't mean she loved the rest any less. She is a strong woman, but I think something inside her broke a little with the thought she hurt her grandchildren. It was a big one, and I was just so done with Luke. My parents have been passive towards the situation so far because I asked them to, but after they heard what happened, they told him they need time away from him. Robert is simply disgusted and decided to not speak with him anymore, which he communicated through the cousin group chat, with Luke's response being that this is why Emma's help on reining all us would be so beneficial if we just let her. He also added how Robert never cared for him or anybody really, and he just tried to be the center of attention all the time. He cited his coming out, his announcement he was going to marry a woman, the birth of his child. It was ridiculous. He came out when Luke was a toddler, and for many years, only our parents and grandparents knew. He announced he was going to marry his now wife through a text, but didn't interfere or took from anybody. His child was born 4 months before Luke's graduation, and apparently that was a big issue for Luke that he never commented. Maybe I am biased, maybe I am selfish like Emma claims, but I call bullshit on his tantrum. Every single one of the cousins has been helped, babysat, tutored, gotten out of trouble, you name it, by Robert. He isn't perfect, but he isn't the conniving ass Luke is claiming. Maybe Luke has always felt inadequate, and we didn't notice. Maybe it was his last-ditch effort. Maybe Emma has manipulated him so far that he can't come back. It doesn't matter anymore. If he does marry Emma, I wish him the best. If he doesn't, I hope he goes to therapy. Regardless of what he decides, he burned so many bridges and hurt so many people. I don't see this resolving anytime soon. For now, I will focus on my grandma and making her feel better. I feel extremely guilty because it was Emma's situation with me that opened this can of worms. I know I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. Update 3. I want to start this by saying that Grandma is in better spirits now. I am overwhelmed by the amount of people supporting her and very grateful for it, even if it's online. I have talked about this on some chats and DMs, but please know the situation with Emma is not about her being parentified or her family being strict Catholics. It's just her being her. They were already going to get premarital counseling. An extra was added. Oh, all cousins also don't live in the same city or town. Some are a bit longer than others, but we keep in touch through the chat. The reason for the update is mainly to let people know Grandma is okay, her health is fine, and she had a blast with my cousin Sarah. I also want to update on what has happened with the cousins and the maternal side of our family. Some of our paternal cousins from Grandma's side have relented and feel a bit bad on excluding Luke from things, so the compromise was met on, he can be invited to everything, just don't force people to interact. These cousins are mainly on the older side and have soft spots for the youngsters. My youngest cousin Sarah said she was okay with it all, but she wanted them to keep him away from her since she can't stand him anymore. Our maternal side was a because of course we need one. Some of them were very upset, but others told me I should try to understand where he was coming from. My mom was the one that told them everything, and some told her she is at fault for making Robert the star of the family. This was so uncalled for, but brought some issues in my family, particularly when one of my maternal cousins asked me if I could behave enough if I am seated at the same table as Luke for his wedding. It makes us doubt ourselves, but really, this is a cousin that Robert has bailed from almost bankruptcy 2 times, and he's the problem? I haven't said much about my sister Lucy since she voiced nothing different before. She was always very close to Luke, and even had a great relationship with Emma before the debacle. She decided to be out of it because she was so disappointed. While she was never made to babysit or anything like that, she was always so into Luke since he was her baby brother. She loved him the most. And I know that because she literally told me when I was a kid. We have a good relationship now because her kids are my buddies, but it was rough for a while before that. She was upset about the whole thing. But when our maternal family, or at least a part, started excusing Luke, she lost it. She's a very calm person. The type you don't expect a bad word out of. But she lost it, and I think it was the last straw on the cold bucket for Luke. She sent a massive message about what has been happening, detailing every single thing, and daring people to kind of come at her if they disagreed. She made sure to include every single nasty thing, every bad word, every eye roll. She sent it to so many people because she was tired of the half-information telephone game. She is upset at me because my refusals made this happen, and she said she knows she shouldn't, but she needs time to fix her feelings, so she is not speaking with me right now. My parents decided they were out of the wedding and told Luke he is on his own. There was never a monetary issue. They were willing to contribute. But both Luke and Emma are pretty well off, and was no need for that. Now to what maybe most people want to know, and the only conflict I am interested about anymore. My grandma is feeling better. Sarah being with her was very positive. It was lovely to see the eldest and youngest of our family so in tune, but then again, they have always been. She requested that Sarah invited Luke to her birthday party, December, and after a lot of back and forward, he is going to be invited. We will see if he comes or not. A small parenthesis, I showed my grandma the joke of the knife, sword, etc. She was so giddy. Thank you. I mentioned before that Robert would pick up Sarah if she needed. It is still true. What I might have not mentioned is that she, of course, gets a weird lecture from him, and an even weirder lecture on how he rates certain drugs. LOL. As I said, he is no saint, but he is not a either. Lastly, yes, he has photos even with my sister or me in the newborn wall. People love to take pics of him holding the new family members, and he collected them and put them together when he got his own house. OP is not an AH for setting her boundaries of her personal beliefs and boundaries. Here, Emma is an AH for being demanding, disregarding OP personal beliefs. OP's standing her ground is reasonable and justified. So, I would rate Emma 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale and OP 0. AITA for feeling like my boyfriend is using me? I've been in a relationship since January 2024. I was abused as a child, so I was always scared of guys. But last year in December, I heard some ridiculous rumors about me being a one-night stand girl, even though I've never even held a guy's hand till then. I live in the countryside, and it's really big deal here. It affected me so much that I started taking rash decisions. I thought it didn't matter they'll talk about me anyways. I liked this one guy, who also confessed I was his childhood crush, almost a year ago, and was still on and off texting me to convince me to be with him. On January 1st, it was his birthday, and I texted him. And when he asked the same question, I said yes. When I met him for the first time, I was uncomfortable, but still, he tried to kiss me, but I shrugged him off saying I was not comfortable, and he didn't do it. But on our second date, we kissed, It was unexpected and scary at first, but I genuinely liked him, so it felt right. On our third date, almost 20 days after our first date, he took me to a hotel and tried to do it. He was trying so hard to make me drunk, and that felt uncomfortable, but nothing happened. It was my second time drinking as well. The first was when we kissed, second date, so I didn't even remember it that much. He is so good at convincing me, so even if I don't feel good about this, after 1 to 2 days, I feel like it's my fault for overthinking things too much. Anyway, we eventually did it in February start. It was my first time, and ever since then, we talked on call almost every day or every other day, except for June and July, because he did it without protection, even though I was begging him not to do it. Then for once, I realized that he doesn't care about me at all. He tried to convince me, saying that he couldn't control himself, and he never used protection when doing with any of his exes. BTW, he has a past with almost 10 to 20-something girls. I broke up that time. I also wondered why he's never bought me flowers or gave any surprise of any kind. Didn't celebrate Valentine's. And every time in the name of the date, we just go to a private place as somebody might see us together, which is fair enough, because I'm not even allowed to talk to a male species, let alone date one. So I'm also not comfortable seeing him in public places, as what if somebody sees us? It'll be the end of my studies, life, everything. Every time I bring up these issues with him, he says something like, "You'll have a problem if somebody sees us in public, so we have no choice but to go to a room, and I just can't control myself whenever I see you. You are completely different than all of the girls I've met. I've never made my first move, and I've never wanted to talk to them. But you are amazing. I want to talk to you every day. You are my first ever crush, and you have no idea how much you mean to me." In starting when he confessed, he also said that when I changed school in 7th standard, he used to go to places where we might run into each other, but it never happened. So he finally gave up and changed school and went somewhere far. I also came back in 2020, and so did he. And then he saw me at a wedding in 2022, and that's when it all started. He confessed after a while, but I never thought of being in a relationship until December last year. I was so convinced with everything he said, but yesterday I got a huge reality check. Last night we were talking, and I was blindly in love until I started asking him some questions that I've always wondered. He was also in a good mood, so he answered honestly, and that's when I felt used, so freaking used. I asked, after I left that school, who was your second crush? And he named the prettiest girl in our class, which made sense. I was always the smartest kid, but never the prettiest. But then he went on saying that he grabbed her tits in 8th standard and laughed, saying how silly it was of him that time. Then what about the story he told me that he loved me so much so he waited, and when I didn't come back, he got a girlfriend in 9th standard after changing schools. I was shocked, but I didn't show it as I wanted to know more. Then he asked me a question, saying, "I also have something I wanted to ask you for a long time." I said, "Sure, go ahead." And then he said that you said it was your first time, but your hymen was already half broke. I was utterly shocked. I was like, what the hell are you even trying to say? And it was my first time only. And then, at first, he said that there's lots of bleeding happens when something like that happens. But in your case, it was so little, and blah blah blah. I said, I don't want to explain. You can look it up on Google, this is normal. I was a biology student BTW. But isn't it common sense? I already told the truth now. Think whatever you want. Then he started saying, "Why are you being so angry?" I just asked, "You were also asking me, so I thought you were in a good mood. I shouldn't have told you anything. You first ask me as if you don't care, and then you become upset about it." And then he started yelling and cursing and saying, "What's wrong with you? I already told you. You are my one and only girl. I love you so much. Why do you always get so upset over things like this?" So this is what happened. Now, I don't understand if this is normal or if I'm overreacting or overexpecting. I don't have anyone to ask this because if someone gets to know that I'm in a relationship, I'd better be dead. OP is not an AH here. Her boyfriend is a big AH for not making their relationship public. This one point is enough to prove that he is using OP. As he is a big AH, I would rate him 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, OP's concerns and reservations are 100% justified, and she is an innocent soul, so I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story form, mediocre_sky_7526. AITA for expecting an apology when my dad made an impromptu speech at my wedding. I just got married over the weekend, and it was really a fantastic day. Everything went according to plan, except for when it came time for speeches. I asked me and my spouse's parents, who wanted to make a speech. My mother and my spouse's father decided they would like to speak. When it came time for speeches, my dad stood up next to my mom and started making a lengthy speech with personal stories about my partner, all these memories throughout the years. It was clearly thought through, as if he had been planning it. I was sitting there so confused because he never expressed interest in speaking. Therefore, I didn't look thrilled. I made eye contact with him and gestured under the table to cut the speech. He stopped. We all clicked glasses, but my feelings were hurt. Some backstory. I had explicitly asked for no surprises on my wedding day. My dad is known to surprise people during big occasions, in a way that is only amusing to him. That is, on my sweet 16, I asked him to not show a montage of baby photos of me, because I was a very self-conscious young girl who didn't want that plastered on a screen for everyone to see. And he did it anyway. On my brother's wedding day, my dad went into their hotel room and trashed it with fake flower petals, paper plates thrown on the floor, confetti everywhere. And they had to spend their first day of marriage cleaning it up. I also did a first look with my dad, had him and my mom join me in the car to the church. He walked me down the aisle. We had a father-daughter dance, and we played my parents' wedding song during the wedding and dedicated a dance to them. All that to say, I thought he was sufficiently involved in the wedding, enough that when he said he didn't want to make a speech, I didn't think twice about it. My parents did financially help with the wedding, as did my spouse's family, which is why we asked them who wanted to make speeches, which family members they wanted to invite, etc. I felt like we did all the right things. I think it's also worth mentioning that I don't have a massively close relationship with my dad. We used to clash a lot when I was growing up. Fast forward to yesterday. My mom called me and I told her that felt like I deserved an apology for the impromptu speech, because I should have been informed beforehand. I didn't say that I was embarrassed by it, but I felt it was disrespectful to my spouse, and I who had spent 2 years planning a wedding. And it wasn't necessarily fair to my MIL, who was the only one who didn't speak at the wedding, because she wasn't aware she could. My dad totally blew up. He called me an ungrateful and that he doesn't consider me his daughter. He was completely lying and saying that I never asked him to make a speech, and that he tried to hug me after the speeches, and I turned away, which never happened. He also told me he wasn't at all involved in the wedding, because he didn't come dress shopping with me, and I didn't ask him to come to the hotel with my mom and I the night before the wedding. For some context, my dad has no interest in clothes, so I didn't think he needed to be at the dress appointments. And the only reason my mom stayed at the hotel with me is because she has a hard time waking up, and I wanted to make sure she wasn't late to hair and makeup in the morning. He also said I looked mad during our dance together, but quite frankly I was. The dance happened after this speech, and it was difficult for me to have this special moment with him when I felt like my boundaries were so obviously ignored on my wedding. He said I humiliated him by cutting him off, but even some of my closest friends told me they didn't even realize I did that, so I didn't make a scene when doing so. I'm feeling really confused. My gut is telling me I have every right to have asked for an apology, but I'm starting to second-guess myself. OP is not an AH for expecting an apology from her father. OP's father is an AH. A big AH for continuously humiliating her. OP was hurt by her father's behavior throughout her wedding and found his speech disrespectful. Discussing personal stories of OP with her partner in the speech is not justified. So, as for the scores, I would rate OP's father 2 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from helpful-customer-787. AITA for asking my boyfriend to watch a movie he's already seen with me. I, 20F, and my boyfriend, 20M, have been together for almost 4 years. I have loved the movie Coraline since I was roughly 6 years old. I would watch it daily for a few months, take a couple months break, and then watch it daily again. I have done this for the past 14 years. I would watch it with friends, on my own. I would read the book over and over. I would watch lore videos, listen to all the songs on repeat, but it would never leave just me and the other people I knew enjoyed it. I used to try and talk about my love for the movie and original book as a kid, but got mercilessly bullied in school and punished at home for bothering my mother, so I no longer like to share things with others. My boyfriend knows I have insecurities when it comes to sharing my love for things like Coraline, because I was so often ridiculed for it. I do understand that my love for the movie is possibly obsessive, but it doesn't impact my life in a harmful way. I still go to work, I still attend my lectures, I still make time for friends, I take care of myself and my cat, and I can talk about other things, so Coraline rarely comes up. This past year, I've gone through a lot regarding my physical and mental health. I had a stroke, needed an emergency heart surgery, and I've tried to take my own life twice before being put on antidepressants and seeing a psychiatrist weekly. I've been through a lot, so I watch Coraline to feel better. I have been watching it daily. It's comforting in a way, yet it still does not impact my life. Today, I asked my boyfriend if he'd like to watch the movie with me, as I expressed I had a bad day and needed comfort. Immediately, he was upset. He complained that he didn't understand why I would watch a movie over and over when nothing new was going to happen, and said I should be bored of it by now. He continued to say we've seen it too many times, he's only watched it with me once this year and once last year, and that he didn't want to watch it again. I was upset at his reaction, but I was fine with watching it on my own. I replied, "Okay, all you had to say was no," and then began watching the movie on my computer. He continued the conversation saying, "Come on, don't do that. You know I didn't say that to upset you. I just don't get how you can rewatch a movie so many times." I told him I wasn't going to justify myself, but that I was sorry I asked and that I wouldn't ask anymore. He again continued with, "You can at least tell me why. I'm not even hating on it. I just don't want to watch it." I paused the movie and responded with, "Okay, and that's fine. But I love this movie and I like rewatching it. I only asked because I'm trying to share something I love with you. It's whatever, babe. I won't ask you anymore." He ignored me, so I started watching the movie again. He was still visibly upset still after 10 minutes, so I paused the movie again and apologized. I said I was sorry if I upset him with my response and told him this movie was just something that brought comfort for me. I told him I've loved it since I was a kid, and that while I didn't know exactly why I loved it so much, I did. I then said, "It makes me a little upset when you express exasperation about something I enjoy. It makes me genuinely happy. It doesn't make me sad or angry. It doesn't take over my life. It cost me no money, and it brings me joy. Why does that bother you?" I again apologized for asking, and said I wouldn't ask again. He then went off on me saying, "Okay, first of all I asked was how you aren't bored. Now if it came off as rude, I'm sorry that's not what I meant it to sound like, but there's no need to make me feel like a complete. I'm just saying what's on my mind, and you know very well that I'm not trying to shit on you for liking things you like. I'm not a child. Again, if I'm sounding rude, sorry, but you could just tell me that I am, instead of making me feel like I should always just say yes to everything you ask. Don't sit there and tell me you won't ask again, like that's what I told you to do. I didn't even say anything like that. I said I don't want to watch it, yes, but that doesn't mean you can't ask me to. I don't want to watch it now, yes, because I'm bored of it. That's it. It's that simple. I never said I won't watch it again with you, and you know very, very well that I'll do anything to make you happy. So telling me I'm on something you love is not right." I didn't know how to respond, so I apologized, turned off my computer, and went to lay in bed. It's been a few hours and we're still silently fighting about it, and I want to know. AITA, for asking my boyfriend to watch a movie he's already seen with me. OP is not an AH. Her boyfriend is an AH. OP seems to be kind of obsessed with that movie, and during her critical condition, if she is asking her boyfriend to rewatch the movie with her, I don't think he should behave rudely. So OP boyfriend is a little bit AH, so I would rate him 1.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's move on to the next story from Offline Student. Am I the AH for telling one of my male friends to move on while throwing my other friend under the bus? I, 23M, am friends with Kelly. 21F Kelly and I go way back to high school when I was one of the leaders for her summer camp. I was in grade 10 going to grade 11, and she was in grade 8 going to grade 9. I was one of the few counselors there who weren't as outgoing as the rest, so I was tasked with getting the introverted campers to join in on the activities. This is when I met Kelly. She was a loner and only had one friend at the camp. I would tease her occasionally to try to get her to open up to me. It worked. Kelly and I became very close throughout the summer. Once camp ended, I told her she could always hit me up if she needed anything. Throughout the school year, Kelly would text me for small things, and we'd send each other memes and jokes similar to what we did during camp. But once I graduated, Kelly and I drifted apart. This was until about a year ago when I started working a part-time job where Kelly worked. I was in university at the still am, and she was thinking about going back to school. So we started talking again. Through Kelly, I was introduced to some of the guys who worked in the mall where we worked. This includes Blake, 21M. We would all go out clubbing, to bars, and to restaurants. We were all drinkers. Blake and I never got too close, but we were still friends. Blake went to the same school as me for 6 years, but I didn't notice. He had been skinny back then, but recently he's been hitting the gym. Now he has arms the size of my head, and he stands half a foot taller than me. I'm 5 feet 6 inch, and he's 6 feet 2 inch. I found out about 2 months ago that Blake and Kelly had been talking for a bit. During this time, Kelly fell head over heels for him, and so did he. Whenever I'd link her with our other friends, she would be fussing over him. But Kelly would flirt and get very close with other guys, including me, and I would reciprocate the feeling. Until one night, me, Kelly, and 8 other friends were out at a bar. 4 girls, 6 guys. Kelly was dancing and I started dancing with her. We danced for about 5 seconds before Kelly told me to stop unless I wanted to deal with Blake. I pulled away immediately in shock since I didn't realize that they were serious. This was because Kelly had told me prior that she was not really interested in anyone and just wanted to have fun. I respected that and started dancing with one of the other girls. Fast forward a few months, and Kelly and Blake were having problems. Another one of our friends had told Blake that Kelly was kissing other guys at a club. She wasn't. She was kissing her girlfriends. Kelly is bi, but Blake already knew this. But that friend had made it seem like she was kissing another guy. I had gotten caught up in the drama because another friend decided to tell me the story, right? As Blake was walking by. He made the story seem funny, like a crazy misunderstanding, so I laughed. Blake overheard us laughing about it and started pressing us and asking questions about it. I was not at the party, so all I could do was repeat what the friend had told me. But Blake wasn't having it. He left the area where we were, angry. By this time, Kelly no longer worked there, so I started asking around. It turns out some of the girls who worked there previously had reputations. So a lot of the guys there kept a healthy distance, and they had been whispering in his ear to break it off, but he was crazy for her and disregarded them. I knew Kelly and her friends, so I didn't really care. I knew Kelly wasn't that type of girl, so I had been encouraging him to pursue it. A month went by and tensions were still high. Everything boiled over when I went to a party hosted by one of the friends in the friend group. At the party, I saw Kelly and a random guy on the couch getting very close. I didn't think much of it at the time because I was a bit tipsy and my main concern was getting home. The next day, I went to another friend's party where I saw Blake. I had been programming the whole day, and by the time I was there, I was already drunk. That's when I told Blake what I saw at the party and told him to move on. Because from my perspective, he was a lot more interested in her than she was in him, and I didn't want him to catch more feelings for her than he already had. I had been in his position, so I understood what he was feeling. I explained to him where it would lead if he didn't. In my eyes, even if she wasn't doing anything wrong, the fact that she was here without him doing this was a huge red flag. But because I was drunk, I made it seem far worse than it was. I told him she's easy, there's no point in pursuing a relationship with her, and he should forget it. We laughed about it and continued drinking. A few days after, one of the girls from our friends group came to me asking what I told Blake. I told her what I said, leaving out a few details. That's when she told me in detail everything I said, even things I didn't remember saying because I was drunk. Blake paged Kelly about it and told her everything. I played it off and told her I was drunk, I don't remember saying anything. We left it at that until today. I woke up to paragraphs of text saying that I'm an AH for saying that about them. Not only did I say something about Kelly, but all the girls in the friend group. Now they're all mad at me. They've removed me from all socials and limited their responses to text. Kelly herself texted me to say that, paraphrasing, I'm dead to her, that she never expected this from her people, and there's no going back from this. So I just want to ask y'all, am I the AH for telling my friend to move on, while effectively throwing my other friend under the bus? I feel bad for what I did and regret even getting involved in their relationship. I want us to keep having the same relationship as we had before, because now none of the girls in the group want to talk to me, and the others who still talk to me don't want to get involved. I literally love this group of friends so much, and Kelly above all of them. I can really be myself around them, and this is killing me. OP is not an AH. His female friend is the AH for being unfaithful and playing the victim card. OP did nothing wrong by telling his friend about her emotional cheating. If she was clear, she should have told her boyfriend about the party. As for scores, I would rate OP 0, and OP's female friend 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Deviled Goose. AITA for telling my dad I'm disappointed in him. I, 15F, recently had a conversation with my dad, 37M, about voting. I know, politics is a sticky topic, but I was curious who he voted for, so I asked. The conversation started normally until he asked me who I'd vote for, to which I gave my answer, and he said that he knew my answer, but was hoping I'd surprise him, even though I've made it clear that I fundamentally dislike and don't agree with the other candidate. I then sort of lightheartedly said that I wouldn't vote for someone taking away my rights, and he responded with saying, "I don't have rights because I'm under 18. He continued to ask why my rights weren't taken away in this candidate's previous presidency, and wouldn't exactly allow me to answer, as he immediately asked another question and diminished my concerns about his policies because I live in a blue state and my rights are currently protected. I admittedly sort of provoked a longer conversation by pointing out the party's proposed policies and introduced morals into the conversation. He started with the usual, "That's not his real plan BC I've heard a million times before." I then asked him how his candidate's plans directly affected him, and he only brought up taxes and gas prices as a concern, which I rebutted with my concerns for my healthcare and safety, and he immediately dismissed me and said that my concerns didn't have a basis to them, when his party and affiliates have actively campaigned against my right to access healthcare. He told me I was welcome to send him children I didn't want, which I don't know why he offered, considering he wasn't even my father for the first 12 years of my life due to drug addiction, and had to move 3 to 4 states away just to actually do better, and doesn't even regularly speak with me. So I don't know how he thinks he could be a father now, but that's beyond me. After that, he started going on about where he gets his information, known propaganda, and political rallies. I pointed out that politicians lie, and for some reason that spurred him into talking about big food corporations and what they're putting into our food. He continues to tell me that he's sure I only get my information from headlines, which I told him, as I'll tell you, that I do my own research and look into what I hear and read articles in there entirely from credible sources. He then tried to claim he wants what's best for people, but defended taking autonomy from women and deporting people living here. He also never told me where he gets his information when I asked, though later in the conversation, he said something about the Joe Rogan podcast and getting information from the Trump administration website, both of which I do not consider credible sources. He also never answered me when I asked who exactly immigrants were affecting, when he tried to claim they were being affected and insisted gang issues and homelessness was due to immigration. He then told me that the videos he used to send me, videos spouting about the moon landing being fake, mind you, we're informational, and gave me the right information. I mentioned that 140 of his candidates' affiliates were involved with the writing of Project 2025. So I find it hard to believe that he's not involved, and he told me he just took Trump at his word that he wasn't involved. I brought up all of Trump's allegations, most proved to be true, and he basically told me it was irrelevant. He ignored my valid concerns about Trump's misogynistic and anti-Semitic views, which he also ignored, and just told me that he would lower grocery prices, taxes, and gas prices. I didn't know how exactly to respond, so I tried to end the conversation here with this message. I'm not surprised that you voted for him and that you're fine with everything he's done, and I'm not surprised that you're defending him. But I am, I think for the first time, genuinely disappointed in you as a father. This goes beyond disagreements. This goes into the fact that you voted a racist into office, whose party has demolished Roe v. Wade and has proposed plans to fully take away abortion rights and health care. I would think you'd want better for me, your daughter. He then kept messaging me and didn't respond directly to my message. He went on to bring religion into the issue and said that everything would be fixed when Jesus came back. He continued to talk about an alien invasion coming and how votes don't matter and how the occult is at play with this election. I just told him that I don't agree with his conspiracy theories, and he told me I don't even know what he's talking about. And when I asked him to elaborate, he just told me he needed a minute and hasn't gotten back to me since. OP's disappointment with her father is justified. Casting a vote and being aware of politics is OP's right, the basic one. OP's father's conspiracy theories made her disappointed. OP is trying to avoid his continuous questioning about political issues. OP's father's no communication is childish and unreasonable. For this behavior, I would call him an AH and rate him 2 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now move on to the next story from Giesel Assault 97. Am I an AH for wanting my partner to come with me to someone's birthday gathering that he wasn't invited to? This person's, let's call them Lily, birthday is on Thursday. My partner works at 2 places and is co-worker to this person. Lily doesn't particularly like my partner for many reasons, way too complicated to explain here. We visit their common place of work from time to time, And sometimes she is working while we hang out and drink beer. Lily is my friend. We all manage to coexist and hang out, so this is where my frustration comes in. For the last couple of months, Lily's communication has gotten pretty bad. I have made it clear her lack of response on multiple occasions is stressful, and she has apologized many times. It happened again recently, and again she apologized. I'm very forgiving, but I'm growing tired of the lack of effort, and I think I made it obvious in our last conversation. I'm in no way trying to be insensitive towards whatever is going in her life. I know depression and anxiety way too well, and though they have expressed that some of those things are happening, I think that taking 3 seconds to reply to a simple text to reassure those who care and think about you is, if anything, considerate. Anyway, I and my partner went to drink at their workplace on Halloween to pre-game for a dance party we were going to attend. The vibes from her were off. She wasn't her usual friendly and affectionate self towards me. I immediately clocked it. It was left at that. Fast forward to a couple of days, I'm talking to another one of their co-workers who is close to Lily and also my friend. And I'm invited to the gathering at the beer place to celebrate Lily's birthday. Still no response from Lily. It's been 4 days since I asked her about her birthday. I already have presents. I plan to go. But knowing the situation with Lily and I feel like I need a friend to go with me in case things are awkward or the worst thing happens. She hates me and didn't want me to attend in the first place. Obviously, that's probably not true. The anxiety that comes from lack of communication creates such feelings and thoughts. And that's why I'm frustrated. I love my friend, but this situation she is creating for the both of us gets me down. I have trouble with social anxiety and have struggled with feelings of feeling left out in situations all my life. I know the place well, and obviously know other people that will be there. But if I'm honest, they are all way closer to each other as they work there. I'm just an outsider to the work family in some way. This is why I asked my partner if he could come with me on Thursday. It's his day off, and I said we'd only be there for a couple hours at best, if things aren't as bad as I think they are. He said there is no way he is going to her birthday party when he wasn't invited and she doesn't like him. I'm like, okay, I understand why maybe it would be a bit uncomfortable, but I know Lily a lot more. And though she doesn't like him, she wouldn't throw a fit or act like her birthday is ruined because he decided to accompany me. Especially with all those people around, and especially because it's at a place they both work at. I'd get it if it was at her house, with exclusively friends and family. He's also very well aware of the situation with Lily and I, and how much anxiety it brings me. Sometimes he's supportive, other times he's not. We went back and forth, me trying to explain that this would be for me to not be all alone and to have some support, and him turning me down saying how rude, disrespectful it'd be to do that. Eventually, I let it go, told him not to come. But still, I feel like the whole point of my argument was that I was asking him to show up for me, in a small, simple manner, and he outright refused. I'm not asking him to buy her a present and do this super hard thing. I just wanted to have someone there to ease the anxiety. We're now in a fight because he didn't think he'd ever have to explain this to anybody. AITA for wanting him to be there? OP is not an AH here. Her partner is an H for not going with OP to her friend's birthday party, despite knowing everything going on between OP and her friend. He shows rudeness and harsh behavior towards her, which makes him an AH. OP needs emotional support from her partner, and she just wants him to be there with her, nothing else. OP is justified in her behavior. As for the scores, I would rate OP's partner 1 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA for going no contact because my family wants my crazy ex to have my baby. I, 32M, am a gay and married to a loving husband. I have a happy life, big home, 3 kids, and whatnot. We had 2 surrogates. So, prior to my husband, I dated my ex, 31F. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah was my first love. She was very kind to me at first and we did everything together. We went to prom, went to college, and I even proposed to her. She was my queen and I would do anything to make her happy. A year into our proposal, she moved into my apartment. This is when I saw the true Sarah. Sarah worked a manager job at a popular drugstore. So I did not think it was weird when she was home kind of late. I just assumed she was closing the store. I was wrong. I found out from friends that Sarah was having fun with the whole neighborhood and then some. She would go to the hotels and wash up before coming home to me. I confronted her and she denied this. Weeks later I got something I thought was just a UTI. And it wasn't. Antibiotics fixed it. I asked her what was going on, and she accused me of cheating while she was working. That was easily disproven, because I'm a nerd, and play D&D with friends who proved I was with them, while I thought she was at work or with girlfriends. This was in videos, and so she had to fess up. I asked what made her want to cheat. I blamed myself and my internship for her change in behavior. I thought maybe we needed more date nights. I forgave her and believed her when she said she was going to change. She did not, and she was just sneakier about it. I found out she was still doing it, and my life went from bad to worse. Sarah got pregnant, but the baby may have not been mine. My family told me to accept this baby and accept her. By this point, our bedroom life was practically non-existent. We had been arguing more, and she always ran to my mom, making it seem like I was abusing her. This is with me with glass in my arm, scratches on my face, and bruises from her hitting me. She had no marks on her. So, I don't get why my mom believed I was hurting her. I couldn't take her mental and physical abuse and dumped her. She ran to my family. My family took her side and told me to man up and be a dad. I said, I will man up when I can get a DNA test. One day she suddenly was not pregnant. She said it was a miscarriage from my abuse. But one of my boys said they saw her at Planned Parenthood. I told this to my mom, and she did not believe me. For a while, I went no contact with my mom. That was till I married my husband, who is my childhood best friend. He convinced me to make up with her and my siblings. He made feel happy again. He was not messing with my head. He was loyal. And before I knew it, we were starting a life together. Recently, my ex got in contact with my mom. They still talk from time to time because she is sweet to my parents. Just not to me. She asked if she can have my genetic material to have a baby. Her current husband has azoospermia, so they can't have a kid. Apparently, we look very similar, and she wants a baby that looks like her husband. My mom said I should do it so I can have more kids and make up for the miscarriage, which she still believes happened. I said no. My husband said no, and my kids don't want a sibling from her. They remember what she did at a family gathering. However, my family is calling me an for not wanting Sarah to carry my baby. I sort of feel like my mom just wants me to have a normal marriage, since she has said in the past that I wouldn't need a surrogate if my partner was female. She is nice to my husband to his face, but I think she regrets me marrying him. Even my extended family is telling me to do it, but my mom is the main matriarch of my family. So, if she says something, everyone says it. But I just don't want this to cause problems with my family and our lives. My mom and ex are making me seem like I am being petty. I said, if they keep pressuring me, I will go no contact. Mom said, if you do, then don't expect anyone to miss you. You let this girl go for a man. The least you can do is give us a male grandchild. Am I in the wrong for feeling uncomfortable about this? AITA, edit 1. My husband did not know the full story when he suggested we reunite. My mom and I have fought over dumb stuff all the time. My parents got divorced because my mom has toxic traits. 2. My bio dad is dead. He died during Hurricane Maria in 2017. He also never liked my ex. 3. I have a lot of baggage because my mom is the main matriarch of my family. What she says is law. So going NC with her is going NC with my whole family pretty much. 4. My twin boys are biologically my husband's kids. My daughter is biologically mine. That is why she wants a male heir. She doesn't view the boys as my kids. So in her eyes, she only has one grandchild. 5. I have been gaslit my entire life. People telling me I am overreacting when my mom does toxic things. So, to a degree, I started to believe it. So, getting all this encouragement from someone outside the situation makes me feel less crazy. Prior to this, we were low contact because mom is pretty annoying to be around. Also, I don't like my stepdad. Thank you everyone for your opinion. Even the negative people. OP is not an AH for setting boundaries for his family. His mother is an AH for prioritizing his ex over him, despite knowing that she cheated on him. It is the height of hypocrisy. OP's mom is an AH, and I would give her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale and OP 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from friendly_lab 7306. AITA, for being hurt that my MIL wanted to exclude my daughter from Thanksgiving and Christmas to protect my SIL. I, 31F, married to my husband Tyler, 32M, and I gave birth to our first child, a baby girl, almost 3 months ago. I love Tyler very much, and I always felt grateful that I married into the family I did. I grew up with a single mom, and it was always just the two of us. I love my mother dearly, but I always wished I had a larger family unit with siblings when I was a little. My mom passed away from ovarian cancer about 2 years ago, and so now I truly don't have family apart from my in-laws. By contrast, my husband's parents are happily married, and he's one of 4 children. Everyone has always been kind and welcoming to me, and I always have a blast at their holidays and family reunions. The only exception is Tyler's twin sister, Ashley. Since I met her, Ashley has been cool and standoffish towards me, especially compared to her friendly younger brothers and parents. She's never been outright mean to me, but she's also never made much of an effort to ask me questions or get to know me. I know she also has some resentment towards Tyler, and sometimes comments on the fact that he's the favorite and that everything comes easy to him. Some of her comments irk me, since I know how hard Tyler has worked for his success, and also see that he has struggles he doesn't share with the family since he doesn't like to burden others. I've never said anything about the comments, since Tyler accepts it's the way she is and doesn't get too bothered by her. Even though Ashley and I are far from best friends, I've been sad to learn that she's had a hard time getting pregnant. She and her husband have been trying for around 2 years now, and she recently had a miscarriage. I've tried to be mindful of what she's going through, and intentionally avoided talking about my pregnancy and now baby around her. I even declined my Miles offer to throw me a baby shower, since I thought it would be difficult for Ashley with everything going on. With that being said, the entire family has been incredibly excited about my daughter. My husband is the first of his siblings to have a child, and so it's an exciting time and transition for the family. Yesterday, my MIL and FIL came to our house for dinner. My MIL said she had something difficult to speak with us about and stared talking about what a hard few years it's been for Ashley. My MIL said Ashley is excited for us, but it's painful to see me with an infant when she's wanted to be a mother for so long. She said Ashley is dreading the holidays because she's worried everyone will be focusing on and fussing over the new baby. My MIL said that she was looking forward to spending the holidays with us, especially since it's our daughter's first Thanksgiving and Christmas, but she's trying to think of her daughter's feelings as well. My MIL basically asked if we could either sit out on the family Thanksgiving and Christmas this year, or hire sitter to watch our daughter, so all the focus won't be on her. My MIL even floated the idea of me staying home with the baby, and my husband stopping by quickly to say hello. My husband was livid. He said that Ashley should be the one to stay home if she can't manage her emotions, and my MIL said that Ashley is going through a lot and needs her family right now. My husband said he's not celebrating the holidays with the family unless the baby and I are both included. I started crying, which surprised everyone, since I rarely show emotion. I said that I feel terrible for Ashley, but I'm incredibly sad and disappointed that my daughter is being excluded. I explained that I don't have family now that my mother is gone, and so I really want my child to have a strong bond with her grandparents, uncles, and aunt. My MIL said there will be opportunities in the future for her to bond with the family. I said I don't think I'll feel welcomed in the future now that I know they're so willing to exclude both myself and my daughter. I said it's sad that we're clearly not viewed as an important part of the family, since my MIL was so quick to suggest we both stay home. I said I understand that Ashley is her daughter, and so her loyalty will always be to her first. But also, I'm very hurt by the request. My MIL started to backtrack and said that she loves me and her granddaughter very much, and that this clearly wasn't the right way to handle the situation. She said she was trying to do the right thing, but she didn't spend enough time thinking everything through. My husband was still fuming and asked his parents to leave, even though his mum was crying and begging to work things out. I've gotten several calls from my MIL today. I know I should give her a call and hear what she has to say, but I'm still so hurt. My husband is also upset and doesn't want to participate in the holidays this year. Maybe I'm being selfish under the circumstances, but I can't believe how easily they could exclude my baby. AITA? OP is not an AH for being concerned about her daughter and her feelings. Her mother-in-law is a little bit of an AH for excluding her granddaughter. Her reaction to her mother-in-law's suggestions is 100% justified. As for scores, I would rate OP's mother-in-law 1 out of 5, and OP stands at 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from sufficient_Acadia 348. AITA for ignoring my daughter for almost 6 months after she sided with my ex-husband when he cheated. 6 months ago, my ex reunited with the one that got away when he was out with our daughter. He was acting weird and melancholy after meeting her, so our daughter asked about her, and he told her about their tragic love story, which is literally just their parents being against their relationship. My daughter, who was a hopeless romantic, was deeply moved by their love story and pushed his dad to pursue his ex and cheat on me. And well, he cheated and I found out. The day I found out about my ex cheating was a blur. I was crying so hard that day that I barely even understand what they were saying. But I remember my daughter saying, "Mom, Dad made us happy for years. It's time for him to be happy too." I honestly would have laughed if she said that to me today, but at the time, I was crying so hard, it didn't register how ridiculous she was. When we separated, our daughter declared she was staying with me, patting my ex on the shoulder and saying, "I'll take care of her, Dad, don't worry." I just rolled my eyes at the time because I was no longer speaking to them both. The first day my ex was gone, she surprised with breakfast in bed, which I shoved down on the floor in front of her. She cleaned it without complaint, and after that day, I started locking my door to avoid such incidents. She cooks for me all the time, and every time she did, I just ignore it. In fact, I didn't eat much at the time, because my ex would often come by and drop off groceries. Whenever the hunger gets too unbearable, I would order delivery and eat in my room. Fast forward to 3 months. My ex came crying back, saying I was actually the one he loves, which I honestly predicted, because although he was very much hung up on the past, he was very sweet and loving to me. Our marriage was literally something out of a movie. Even after 17 years of marriage, we still acted like newlyweds. Date nights every weekend, cuddles, and playing video games together. We never even fought. We just banter playfully. The day he came back, he told me how they always fought, about how she wasn't as understanding and loving as me, about how he missed my cuddles and playing video games with me. Of course, I just ignored him. After that day, he started staying at our house. He tried to sleep in our room the first night, but I stood up and slept in the living room. After that, he started sleeping in the guest room. That day too, I remember my daughter telling me, as she sat with me on the living, "Aren't you glad, Mom? Dad is back. We're going to be a family again." I would have laughed at her face if I wasn't busy treating her like air. After that day, they started doing everything to make it up for me. My ex even started bringing me home flowers every day. They gave me gifts, cooked and cleaned for me, and all the while, I just kept ignoring them, not uttering a single word. 3 days ago was the first day my daughter confronted me, which is probably because it was her 17th birthday. I used to make homemade cakes for her and decorate the house depending on what her current interest is. That day, she was crying in the kitchen, and I just ignored her and walked past her to get coffee. She started talking to me, asking me why I couldn't forgive them. She told me I was being cruel, that they already did everything they could. She cried and cried, telling me all the stuffs we used to do on her birthday, about how happy we were, about how she wants to go back to that. That day, I looked at her for the first time in 6 months, and I felt nothing. I wasn't moved or anything by her tears. I didn't feel anger or hurt. I didn't feel sorry for what I did. After we stared at each other for a while, I just went back to my room without talking to her. That day was also the day my parents came and talked to me. They're trying to get me to forgive my ex and daughter. They never asked me before to forgive them. They said the same things my daughter said, that I was being cruel. When I confided to my best friend, she told me that maybe it's time to forgive them. That my daughter was still so young, and she made a mistake, but she's still my daughter. In all honesty, I don't feel like I did anything cruel, since they were the ones who betrayed me first. And although I'm not mad anymore, I honestly don't feel anything for them anymore. And I feel like it's just a hassle to even try and be family with them. But people I know are insisting I just forgive them. Am I really the one being cruel here? OP is not an AH for being furious with her daughter. Her daughter hurt her deeply by enabling and romanticizing her father's cheating on her mom. So, OP's response is natural, and of course 100% justified. OP's daughter is an AH here, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the last story from Music Art 360. AITA for not going to shop with my husband and our children? I'll start the story by giving some context. I have a startup business that takes up a lot of my time and energy. Lately, I have been taking my 2 children, 6 years old and 3 years old, with me to work in the evenings. I own a studio, so the hours are non-conventional. I had an extremely stressful week of work. Friday came along, and I had to prepare for a workshop that my engineer and I would be hosting the next day, all day. It took a few hours to set up the studio and to prepare the musical ideas, map everything out so the recording session goes smoothly. After finishing those preparations, with my children in tow, I went back home. Upon our arrival at approximately 10 p.m., I put the children to bed and began cleaning up toys and laundry that I didn't get to during the week. I also cleaned up the litter box and cage for our bunny. We have 3 cats and 1 bunny. I cooked lunch for the next day since my grandmother would be babysitting the children, and I didn't want to stress her too much. I went to bed at approximately 2 a.m. The next day, I woke up at 8 a.m. to get ready and go to the studio. I was at the studio by 9 a.m. to now prepare for the musicians to arrive and set up their equipment. We were joined at 10 a.m. with students taking our workshop. Our session went smoothly, and the whole workshop ended at 4 p.m. I was completely worn out. We tore down the equipment and had a brief team meeting. I left at 6:30 p.m. I came home and took a little time to myself, 30 minutes maybe, before I had to get the children ready for bed, bathe, read together, tell a story, and pray. As exhausted as I was, I went to bed late again, approximately 11:30 p.m. Sunday came, and my children woke us up at 8 a.m. We had breakfast that my husband put together and went to church. It so happened that particular Sunday was my turn to serve in the classroom for the 2s and 3s S. For some reason, we had 3 huge meltdowns in the span of 1.5 hours. This may haven't ever happened since I started volunteering. I felt as if I was the main person calming down the kids with meltdowns, even though there were 2 other adults present. After church, we went out to lunch at a restaurant with some family. By the time it hit 3:30 p.m., I was done. I just needed a nap and some time to recharge my social battery. This is where it gets interesting. We were walking back to the car, and my husband says, "We should stop by to buy the children's shoes." I promised them. I simply told him that I was incredibly tired, and we should just go home. He insisted on going to the store, and then back to church for the children's Awana club. I was quiet, hoping he would understand where I was coming from. We drove out, and he put in Nike shoe store into our GPS. I reminded him that I would be tired and wanted to stay in the car. He said, "No, you will be going too." I didn't argue, but I wasn't going to comply. We arrived and parked at the store. He came out, as did our children. I unbuckled and remained seated. He motioned to me to get out, and I told him that I was tired and did not want to go. He opened the car door and repeated himself. I stayed firm in my decision. He threw the key fob at my direction and headed to the store with both children. He was gone for about 45 minutes. While they were gone, I fell asleep. When they came back, he loudly banged on the door. He knew he could have easily opened the door himself, and he saw that I was asleep. He bought a snack to eat and shared with the kids. Only after they ate all of it, he offered me the last few berries that were left over. We came to the children's Awana. I accompanied my 3 years and took part in the activities. It was approximately 1.5 hours long. Afterwards, we went back home. My husband ignored me the whole time. When we got home, I started getting the children ready for bed. He heated himself up some leftover lunch I had prepared the day before. I asked if he liked it, and he made a snide remark about how I cared about him. But I didn't care when he wanted me to go shopping with him and the children. I told him that I did care, but I was not the bad guy for not going shopping. I insisted that I didn't do anything wrong. He told me that I wasn't seeing things clearly. So, AITA? Additional information. Husband's profession and working hours. My husband is an entrepreneur and has his own IT consulting business. He has a number of clients that he services during the week. He sets his own hours and manages his own time. He does not have employees or other partners. His typical workday would start around 9 a.m. at home from his computer. He visits his clients in the early afternoons and usually finishes his work around 6:30 p.m. unless he has a project to complete. He has plenty of time to make himself breakfast in the morning and go work out in the evenings and meet up with his friends. He takes care of most of our bills and payments. My profession and working hours. I own and operate a recording school. We function as a vocational school and teach audio engineering and music production. Our course is hands-on, and we have our classes in the evenings. I also work for a different company as an administrator. The hours are flexible, and as long as I get my work done, the owner is happy. It is a hybrid position. I cover some bills and our medical insurance. Clarification about my volunteering. I volunteer once a month for 1.5 an hour in the 2s and 3s classroom. I did that so my 3-year-old sons would get used to the atmosphere. I also attend Awana with my 3-year-old, and this recently started. For little children, it is mostly activities and playtime. I am not required to participate, and we don't go every Sunday. We just happen to go on that particular day. My own hobbies and time with friends. I'll be real. I don't really have time for myself. Additional information on Friday night. My husband went to bed early as he was complaining about being tired. He was in bed by 10 p.m. More clarification on Saturday. I asked my grandmother to babysit because my husband planned on doing yard work. We live on a rather large property, and it would be difficult to watch the children and complete the work. He worked for most of the day and relaxed in the evening. OP is not an AH here for her behavior. Rather, her husband is an AH for being dismissive of his wife's struggles and what she has been doing for the family. OP's husband is an AH, and I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH score. And I would rate OP 0 on the AH scale. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below.